Hi guys, tonight we drift quietly into the frozen north woods of the late 1800s. The sun is sinking fast behind the tall pines. The air is turning very cold now. It feels like sharp needles against your cheeks. The wind is coming through the trees like a cold river, finding every tiny gap in your heavy clothes. You can hear the dry snow crunching and snapping under your heavy boots as you walk. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. You are walking through a forest that feels like it goes on forever. This is the North Woods, a place of deep shadows and very old trees. The year is 1885. You are in the middle of a cold winter in Maine. Everything around you is white and grey. The sky is the colour of lead, heavy and low. You can feel the weight of the air. It is a dry, biting cold that makes your nose sting when you breathe in. You pull your collar up higher. Your breath comes out in thick white clouds that float away in the wind. You are wearing a very heavy coat. It is called a mackinaw. It is made of thick, scratchy wool. It is dyed in big squares of red and black. The wool is so thick that it feels like a heavy blanket draped over your shoulders. It is the most important thing you own right now. Without this wool, the winter would find its way to your skin in seconds. Under the coat, you have on 2 shirts made of grey wool. They are itchy, but they are warm. You can feel the weight of the clothes as you move. Each step in the deep snow takes a lot of work. Your legs feel heavy. Your feet are inside big leather boots that have been rubbed with animal fat to keep the water out. The snow is very deep here. It comes up to your knees in some places. You have to lift your legs high with every step. You are following a trail made by other men and horses. The trail is a narrow path of packed snow. It is a bit easier to walk here, but you still have to be careful. If you step off the path, you will sink deep into the soft, white powder. The forest is very quiet. The only sound is the wind high up in the tops of the pine trees. It sounds like the ocean, a long way off. Sometimes you hear a loud crack. It sounds like a gun going off. It is just a tree. The sap inside the tree has frozen and expanded, making the wood pop and split. It is so cold that the trees themselves are snapping. You are a lumberjack. People also call you a shanty boy. That is the name for the men who live and work in these woods during the long winter months. You work from can to can't. That means you start as soon as you can see the sun in the morning, and you stop when you can't see it anymore at night. It is a hard life, but right now, you are not thinking about the work. You are thinking about the camp. You are thinking about getting out of this wind. The light is fading more now. The world is turning a deep, dark blue. The shadows of the trees are long and thin. They look like fingers reaching across the snow. You look up through the branches. The first few stars are starting to poke through the grey clouds. They look cold and bright, like tiny pieces of ice hanging in the sky. You stop for a moment. You stand perfectly still. In this moment, the woods are completely silent. There are no birds singing. There are no bugs buzzing. Everything is asleep under the snow. You can hear your own heart beating in your ears. It is a steady, slow thud. You feel very small in this big, frozen world. The forest is huge, and you are just one person walking through it. But you are not lost. You know the way. You can smell something in the air now. It is not just the smell of pine and ice. It is a faint, sweet smell. It is the smell of wood smoke. That smell means home. It means a fire is burning somewhere close by. It means there are other people near. You start walking a little faster. Your boots make a rhythmic sound on the packed snow. Crunch, crunch, crunch. You round a big group of cedar trees. The branches are heavy with snow, hanging down like white arms. And then you see it. A small yellow light is flickering in the distance. It is a tiny speck of warmth in the big blue dark. As you get closer, you see more lights. They are coming from the small windows of the logging camp. The camp is a collection of low buildings made of dark logs. They look like they are huddling together against the cold. The roofs are covered in a thick layer of snow, maybe 3 feet deep. The snow on the roofs helps keep the heat inside, acting like a big white hat for the buildings. The biggest building is the bunkhouse. This is where you will sleep. It is a long, low cabin. It does not look like much from the outside. It looks like a pile of logs and snow. But you know that inside, it is a different world. You can see the big chimney made of stones, a thick, Grey plume of smoke is rising straight up into the still air. The smoke looks like a ghost rising from the roof. It carries the scent of burning maple and pine. You reach the edge of the camp. You see the tracks of the big sleds that the horses pull. The tracks are deep rifts in the ice. You see the wanigan, which is the big chest where the supplies are kept. It sits near the door of the main cabin. Everything is covered in a fine layer of frost. The wood of the buildings looks silver in the starlight. You walk toward the heavy wooden door of the bunkhouse. Your hands are stiff inside your wool mittens. You can barely feel your fingers, but you know the warmth is just a few steps away. You stop one last time before you go inside. You look back at the dark woods you just walked through. The trees look like a solid wall of black now. The wind gives one last whistle through the needles. You feel a shiver run down your back, but it is not just from the cold. It is the feeling of being safe. You have made it through the night shift of the forest. You have finished your long walk. The deadly winter is out there, but you are here. You reach out and touch the door. The wood is rough and cold. You can feel the grain of the log under your mitten. You push against the heavy door. It is solid and thick, built to keep the north wind exactly where it belongs on the outside. You lean your weight into it, and the door begins to creak open. A line of golden light spills out onto the white snow at your feet. It looks like a path of honey. Along with the light comes a wave of heat. It hits your face like a warm hand. It smells of tobacco, wet wool, and old pine. You step over the high wooden sill. You are inside now. The door swings shut behind you with a heavy thud, cutting off the sound of the wind and the bite of the frost. You are safe. You are warm. The long night in the shanty is about to begin. You stand just inside the door for a moment, letting the heavy wood lean against your back. The room is dim, lit only by the orange glow of the fire and a few small lamps. Before you move further into the room, you think about the building itself. This is the shanty. It is not a house like the ones you see in the towns. It is a simple, low building made for one thing: survival. When the crew first arrived here in the late autumn, there was nothing but trees. To make this camp, the men had to use the very forest they were living in. They picked the straightest, strongest spruce and pine trees. They cut them down, stripped away the branches, and stacked the logs one on top of the other. The logs are thick and heavy. Some are as wide as your waist. They are held together at the corners with deep notches, so they fit like the fingers of two hands locking together. The most important thing about the shanty is how low it is. The roof is not high and grand. If you are a tall man, you might almost be able to touch the ceiling beams with your hand. The men built it this way on purpose. A high ceiling would let all the warm air rise up and stay where nobody could feel it. By keeping the roof low, the heat from the stove stays down where the men are sitting and sleeping. It is a clever way to keep the frost away from your skin. You turn around and look at the wall next to the door. You can see the gaps between the big round logs. These gaps are filled with something soft and green. This is called chinking. In the summer and autumn, the men gathered piles of moss from the forest floor. They took the damp, springy moss and stuffed it deep into every crack between the logs. They used flat sticks to poke it in tight. Then, they covered the moss with a mixture of mud and clay. Now that it is winter, that mud has frozen as hard as a rock. The moss inside acts like a wool blanket for the whole building. It stops the wind from whistling through the cracks. You reach out a gloved hand and touch a patch of the frozen mud. It feels cold, like stone, but you know that just on the other side of that wall, the winter is trying to get in. The wind is pushing against the logs, but the moss and mud are holding it back. It is a simple wall, but it is the only thing keeping the world from turning into ice. Leaning against the wall near the door is a tool you know very well. It is a peavey. This is a micro-history of the woods, a tool that every lumberjack must master. It is a long wooden handle made of strong ashwood. At the end, there is a sharp metal spike and a big swinging metal hook. It looks like a giant bird's beak. You use this tool to grab and roll the heavy logs. Without the peavey, the logs would be too heavy to move. It is heavy in your hand, but it is your best friend when you are out on the snow. You leave it there, leaning against the logs, its metal parts shining a little bit in the firelight. The roof above you is just as thick as the walls. It is made of shakes, which are flat pieces of wood split from a log. These are layered over the top of the cabin like the scales of a fish. On top of those shakes, the snow is piled up into a huge white mound. From the outside, the shanty looks like it is buried, but inside, that snow is actually helping you. It acts like an extra layer of insulation. Insulation is a word for anything that keeps the heat in and the cold out. The deeper the snow gets on the roof, the warmer the bunkhouse becomes. You take a deep breath. The air in here is very different from the air outside. Outside, the air is thin and sharp. Here, it is heavy. It is thick with the smell of the logs. Since the logs are still relatively fresh, they bleed a sticky, sweet liquid called resin. It smells like the very heart of the forest. It is a sticky golden sap that smells like pine needles and earth. This scent fills every corner of the room. It mixes with the smell of the wood smoke from the big stove in the middle of the floor. You look down at the floor. It is not made of boards or tiles. It is made of earth and packed wood chips. Over the months, the many boots of the men have trodden the ground until it is as hard as a pavement. It is dark and dusty, but it is solid. In some places, the men have laid down extra hemlock branches to keep the dust down. The floor feels firm under your boots. There is a moment of deep silence now. The men are mostly quiet, resting after a day of swinging heavy axes. You stand there, just watching the way the light from the stove moves across the rough bark of the walls. The shadows are long. They stretch across the floor and climb up the bunks. You can see the steam rising off your own wet coat. It looks like a tiny cloud following you. Everything in this room was made by hand. The benches, the bunks, the table. They all came from the trees right outside that door. There is no paint here. There is no wallpaper. There is only the natural colour of the wood-rich browns, deep greys, and the golden spots where the sap has dried. It is a very simple place, but it feels like a palace because of the warmth. You look at the corners of the room where the logs meet. There are small bits of white frost in the very furthest corners where the heat of the stove doesn't quite reach. It reminds you that the deadly winter is never far away. It is always waiting, just a few inches through the wood. If the fire went out, the frost would creep across the floor like a slow white tide. But the fire is not going out. The big barrel stove is roaring. You feel a sense of pride as you look at the shanty. You and the other men built this. You made a place where you can live and sleep while the rest of the world is frozen solid. It is a sturdy little fort in the middle of the wilderness. You feel your muscles start to relax. The tension from the long, cold walk starts to leave your shoulders. You are no longer fighting the wind. You are no longer fighting the snow. You have found the shanty, and the shanty is holding you safe. You begin to unbutton your heavy mackinaw coat. The buttons are big and round, made of hard bone. They are difficult to move with your cold fingers, but you take your time. You pull the coat off and feel the sudden change in your body. Without the heavy weight of the wool, you feel light, almost like you could float. You hang your coat on a wooden peg driven into the log wall. The peg is just a branch that was trimmed and sharpened. You stand there in your grey wool shirts, feeling the heat of the room soaking into your skin. It feels like a warm bath. You look around at the other men. Some are sitting on a long bench, their heads low. Some are already lying in their bunks. Everyone is quiet, enjoying the simple fact that they are out of the cold. You feel a deep connection to this place and these people. You are all part of the night shift of the forest. You all share this low log ceiling and these moss-filled walls. This is your world for the winter, and for now, it is the best place on earth. The air inside the bunkhouse is thick. It is not like the thin, sharp air of the forest. It is heavy and slow, and it carries the story of the whole camp in every breath you take. As you stand by your coat, you close your eyes and let your nose tell you where you are. The first thing you smell is the pine. It's a very strong, sharp scent. It is the smell of the trees that have just been cut down. When a tree is felled, the wood is still green, which means it is full of sap. This sap is the blood of the tree, and it smells like a mixture of lemon and earth. It is everywhere. It is on your hands, your clothes, and the logs that make up the walls. Mixed with the pine is the smell of the smoke. It is a soft, sweet smell that reminds you of home. The barrel stove in the middle of the room is burning big logs of maple and birch. Hardwoods like these burn for a long time and give off a smell that is different from the pine. It is a deeper, richer scent. Sometimes a bit of the smoke escapes from the stove when the door is opened to add more wood. This smoke hangs in the air near the ceiling, creating a thin, blue haze. It gets into your hair and your skin. After a few weeks in the woods, you don't even notice it anymore. It becomes a part of who you are. There is another smell here, too. It is the scent of wet wool. Every man in this room has been working in the snow all day. Their mittens, their coats, and their thick socks are all damp. As the heat from the stove hits these clothes, the water starts to turn into steam. You can see the little wisps of white vapor rising from the racks and the pegs on the wall. The smell is heavy and a bit musty. It is the smell of hard work. To a person from the city, it might seem strange, but to you, it is the smell of comfort. It means the work is done for the day and the drying has begun. You move a little further into the room. You can smell the tobacco now. Many of the men are sitting quietly with their pipes. They use a very strong kind of tobacco that comes in hard blocks. They have to shave off little pieces with a sharp knife before they can put it in their pipe. The smoke from the pipes is thick and white. It curls around the beams of the ceiling like tiny snakes. It adds a spicy, earthy layer to the air. It is a peaceful smell. It is the scent of a man who's finally sitting down to rest his tired bones. Here is a small historical fact for you to think about while you breathe. In a bunkhouse like this, there are often 50 or 60 men living in one single room. Because there are no walls between the beds, the air stays shared by everyone. This means the room gets very warm very quickly, even when it is 40 degrees below zero outside. It can feel like a tropical summer inside the shanty. All that body heat and the heat from the stove make the air feel thick and moist. It is a strange feeling to be so warm when you know the world outside is freezing solid. You notice a small tin sitting on a shelf near the door. This is a bit of microhistory that every shanty boy knows. Inside the tin is balsam gum. During the day, if a man gets a small cut from a tool or a scratch from a branch, he looks for a balsam fir tree. These trees have small blisters on their bark. If you poke the blister, a clear, sticky liquid comes out. The men collect this liquid in tins. It smells very strong, almost like medicine. They rub it on their cuts to help them heal. It is the forest's own bandage. The scent of the balsam gum is sharp and clean, and it cuts through the heavier smells of the bunkhouse. You stand very still in the center of the room. This is a moment of deep silence. Even though there are dozens of men around you, no one is talking. The only sound is the soft hiss of the sap inside a burning log and the occasional clink of a metal cup. You watch the dust motes dancing in a single beam of light from a lamp. The dust moves slowly, drifting up and down in the warm air. It looks like tiny bits of gold floating in the dark. You feel the rhythm of the room. It is a slow, steady pulse. Everyone is breathing together, sharing the same warm, pine-scented air. The smell of the food is starting to drift in now from the cookhouse next door. Even though the cookhouse is a separate building, the scent finds its way through the cold air and into the bunkhouse whenever the door opens. You can smell salt pork frying in a big pan. It is a salty, fatty smell that makes your stomach growl. You can also smell shanty bread. This is a heavy, dense bread that the cook bakes in big pans. It smells like yeast and warm flour. It is the kind of bread that sticks to your ribs and gives you the energy to swing an axe for 10 hours straight. You look at the lobs of the walls again. In the heat of the room, some of the logs are crying. This is what the men call it when the heat makes the resin leak out of the wood. You see a long golden tear of sap slowly rolling down the side of a dark log. You reach out and touch it with your finger. It is very sticky and warm. You bring your finger to your nose. The smell is incredibly strong. It is like the essence of 1,000 pine needles squeezed into one drop. It is a clean, wild smell. It reminds you that even though you are inside, you are still deep in the heart of the wilderness. The air also carries the scent of the skid grease. This is a heavy oil used on the big wooden sleds to help them slide over the ice more easily. Some of it always gets on the men's boots and trousers. It has a heavy, oily smell, like a machine. It reminds you of the big horses that pull the logs and the heavy chains that clank in the snow. It is the smell of the industry, the work of moving mountains of wood from the forest to the river. As you stand there, you feel the moisture in the air settling on your skin. It feels soft and relaxing. The dryness of the winter wind has been replaced by this humid, steamy atmosphere. Your face, which was red and stinging from the frost just a few minutes ago, now feels cool and calm. You feel the tension in your forehead start to fade away. The smells of the shanty are like a warm blanket wrapping around your mind. They tell you that you are where you belong. You take one more deep breath, filling your lungs with the pine, the smoke, and the scent of the wood. It is a complex smell, but it is a good one. It is the smell of a community of men who are all working together to survive the winter. It is the smell of safety. You look toward the big stove, where the orange light is reflecting off the tin cups and the tired faces of your friends. You are ready to move closer to the heat. You are ready to let the scents of the camp lead you toward your rest. The night is long, But the shanty is full of life and warmth. You feel a deep sense of peace as you finally step away from the door and join the others in the golden glow. The door is the most important part of the shanty right now. It is not like the thin, light doors you have in a house in a city. This door is made of 2 layers of thick pine boards. They are nailed together in a cross shape to make sure the wood does not wart or bend in the wet weather. It is heavy, so heavy that you have to lean your whole body against it to make it move. As you push, the hinges made of thick leather or beaten iron let out a long, slow groan. It sounds like the building itself is welcoming you back from the cold. You step over the threshold. The threshold is the big squared-off log at the bottom of the doorway. It is worn smooth in the middle from hundreds of heavy boots stepping over it every single day. As you pull the door shut, you feel the latch string. This is a simple but clever bit of history. It is a piece of leather string that hangs through a small hole in the door. When you pull it from the outside, it lifts a wooden bar on the inside, so the door can open. At night, when the last man is in, the cook pulls the string inside. This locks the door so the wind cannot blow it open. It is a simple way to stay safe. The moment that door clicks shut, the world changes. The screaming wind is gone. The biting frost is gone. You are standing in a small space just inside the entrance. This is where you leave the world of the forest behind. You feel the ice that has frozen into your beard starting to melt. It turns back into water, and the cold drops run down your neck. It feels strange, but it is a good feeling. It means you are thawing out. You reach up with your mitten and wipe the frost from your eyelashes so you can see clearly. At your feet, you set down your turkey. This is a micro-history detail that every lumberjack knows. A turkey is not a bird. It is the name for your heavy canvas bag. Inside this bag, you keep everything you own in the world. You have a spare shirt, some woolen socks, a tin of tobacco, and maybe a small picture of your family back home. The bag is made of rough brown cloth and has a string to tie it shut. It is called a turkey because when it is full and sitting on your back, it looks a bit like the shape of the bird. You set it down on the hard-packed earth floor, feeling the weight of it leave your tired shoulders. The change in temperature is almost a shock to your body. Outside, it is so cold that your breath freezes. Inside, it is nearly 80 degrees. This is because the shanty has almost no windows. Here is a simple historical fact. Windows were very expensive and they let out too much heat. Most bunkhouses only had 1 or 2 tiny windows with thick glass, or sometimes just a piece of stretched animal skin that let in a little bit of grey light. Because there are no windows to let the heat escape, the big stove in the middle of the room turns the shanty into a warm box. You can feel your heart beating a little faster as your blood starts to move more easily through your warm skin. You look down at your trousers. They are stanked. This means you took a sharp knife and cut the bottom 6 inches off the legs. You did this because long trousers are dangerous in the woods. If they get wet and freeze, they become heavy like lead. If they have long bottoms, they might catch on a branch or a bush and make you trip while you are carrying a heavy axe. Every man in this room is stagged trousers. It is the mark of a real woodsman. You see the frayed edges of the wool hanging just above your boot tops. They are caked with bits of frozen snow that are now turning into little puddles on the floor. You take a moment of silence now. You just stand there with your back to the door and your eyes closed. You listen to the sound of the night shift resting. You hear the low, steady rumble of a dozen different conversations. You hear the sound of a metal pot being moved on the stove. You hear the soft thump of a man jumping down from a high bunk. But mostly, you hear the quiet. It is a heavy, peaceful quiet that only comes when men are very tired and very warm. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for this simple log box. Without it, the winter would be an enemy you could not beat. Inside here, the winter has no power over you. The light in the room comes from slush lamps. These are another small bit of history. A slush lamp is just a tin can or a small iron pot filled with old grease or fat. A piece of twisted rag is stuck into the grease and lit with a match. It does not give off a very bright light. It is a flickering orange light that smells a bit like cooking meat. It makes the shadows on the walls look big and soft. You watch a shadow move across the ceiling beams. It looks like the ghost of a great pine tree. The dim light is easy on your eyes after the bright, blinding white of the snow outside. You feel your fingers starting to tingle. This is the thaw. It is a bit painful, like tiny pins being pushed into your skin, but you know it is a good sign. It means the blood is returning to your frozen hands. You rub your hands together, feeling the rough texture of your palms. You look at the other men. They are all shapes and sizes, but they all look the same tonight. They all have red faces from the wind and tired eyes from the sun. They all look like they are part of the building itself, as solid and sturdy as the logs. You see a big wooden barrel near the door. It is filled with fresh water brought in from the stream. The cook had to break the ice on the stream with an axe to get it. There is a long-handled tin dipper hanging on a nail next to the barrel. You reach out, take the dipper, and scoop up some water. It is so cold it makes your teeth ache, but it tastes wonderful. It tastes like the mountains and the sky. You drink it slowly, feeling the cold liquid travel all the way down to your stomach. It is a simple pleasure, but here in the woods, simple things are the best things. You look around the room, finding your bearings. The bunkhouse is one long room. There are no hallways or private areas. To your left and right are the bunks, stacked too high against the walls. In the very center is the great stove, the heart of the camp. And between the stove and the bunks is the long wooden bench where the men sit. You know that soon you will walk over to that bench and take your place. You will take off your heavy boots and let the heat of the fire dry your socks. But for now, you just enjoy the feeling of being inside. You are no longer a person fighting the elements. You are a person at rest. You feel the heavy door at your back, a thick barrier between you and the deadly frost. You are safe in the shanty. You are warm. You are home. You pick up your turkey bag, take a deep breath of the smoky air, and take your first real step into the golden light of the room. Your night is just beginning, and it is going to be a very peaceful one. You move away from the heavy door and walk toward the center of the room. Your eyes are drawn to the source of all the warmth. In the very middle of the shanty sits the great barrel stove. It is the heart of the camp. Without this stove, no one could stay here for more than a few hours. It is a large, dark object made of thick cast iron. It looks like a big metal barrel lying on its side, held up by 4 strong iron legs that look like the paws of a bear. This stove is a clever piece of work. It is designed to hold very large logs, so the men do not have to spend all night cutting wood into small pieces. The door of the stove is at one end. It is a heavy square of iron with a small round handle. As you get closer, you can see thin lines of bright orange light leaking out from around the edges of the door. The fire inside is roaring. You can hear it growling, a deep and steady sound like a large animal breathing. Every now and then, a piece of wood inside shifts and settles, sending a shower of sparks against the iron walls with a sharp tink-tink-tink sound. The heat coming off the stove is so strong it feels like a physical weight. It is not like the heat from a small fireplace in a house. This is a powerful dry heat that pushes against your chest. It makes the air around the stove look wavy, like the air above a hot road in the summer. You stop a few feet away and just stand there, letting the heat soak into your wool shirts. You can feel the moisture in your clothes turning to steam. A soft white mist begins to rise from your shoulders, making you look like you are glowing in the dim light. Here is a simple historical fact about the stove. It is the only thing in the whole building that never sleeps. In a logging camp, the fire in the barrel stove is never allowed to go out from the first day of winter until the day the snow melts in the spring. If the fire went out, the water in the barrels would freeze, the men would wake up with frost on their blankets, and the whole work of the camp would stop. There is always someone whose job it is to watch the fire. Usually, it is a young boy or an older man who cannot work in the woods anymore. They make sure there is always a fresh log ready to go in before the old one burns away. Underneath the stove, there is a large wooden frame filled with sand. This is a microhistory detail that is very important for safety. It is called the sandbox. Because the floor of the shanty is made of dirt and wood chips, a stray spark from the stove could easily start a fire that would burn the whole cabin down in minutes. The sandbox catches any red-hot coals or sparks that might fall out when the door is opened. It also protects the ground from the intense heat of the iron. The sand is a dull grey colour, and you can see where men have put out their pipes in it. It is a simple tool, but it keeps the deadly winter from being joined by a deadly fire. You watch the stove for a long time. The iron has turned a very dark red in some spots because it is so hot. You see the way the heat has changed the colour of the metal over time. It is not smooth and shiny anymore. It is rough and has a dusty look to it. This stove has seen many winters and has kept hundreds of men from freezing. You feel a strange kind of respect for it. It is just a big piece of metal. But it is the most valuable thing in the forest right now. Now, There is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stand perfectly still and watch the way the orange light from the stove's vents dances on the ceiling. Because the fire is always moving, the light is never still. It flickers and jumps, casting long, shaky shadows of the support beams across the roof. These shadows look like the branches of the trees you saw outside. The room is so quiet that you can hear the metal of the stove ticking. This happens because the iron is so hot that it's expanding and stretching. It sounds like a tiny hammer hitting a nail. Tick, tick, tick. It is a rhythmic, comforting sound. It tells you that the stove is working hard to keep the frost at bay. You look at the top of the stove. It is flat and wide. There is a large tin pot sitting on the back of it, filled with water. The water is bubbling softly, sending a little bit of steam into the air. This helps keep the air from getting too dry. Next to the pot, someone has left a pair of heavy leather mittens to warm up. The leather is dark and shiny with oil, and you can see the steam rising from them. The heat of the stove is being used for everything: to warm the men, to dry the clothes, and to keep the water ready for tea or washing. The smell near the stove is even stronger than it was by the door. It is the smell of char. This is the scent of wood that has been burned almost to nothing. It is a dry, dusty smell that reminds you of the end of a long day. Mixed with it is the smell of the iron itself. When iron gets very hot, it has a metallic, sharp scent that you can almost taste on the back of your tongue. It is the smell of the night shift at its most basic level. It is the smell of fire and metal working together to beat the cold. You feel the skin on your face getting very warm, almost too hot. You take a step back, but you don't want to move too far away. The warmth is like a drug. It makes your muscles feel soft and heavy. You look at the Deacon Seat nearby, the long bench where the men sit. You know that is your next stop, but for one more minute, you just want to look at the fire. You imagine the cold wind outside, hitting the log walls and trying to find a way in. You imagine the snow piling up against the door. Then you look back at the glowing red light of the stove and you feel a deep sense of victory. The winter is big and strong, but man has fire, and fire is stronger. The light from the stove reflects in the eyes of the men sitting on the bench. Their eyes look bright and golden. No one is talking about the cold or the wind. They are all just soaking in the glow. The stove is like a campfire in the middle of a cave. It brings everyone together. It makes this rough log cabin feel like a home. You feel your heartbeat slowing down to match the steady rhythm of the fire. The day's work is far behind you now. The morning is a long way off. Right now, there is only the heat, the light, and the safe red glow of the barrel stove. You reach out your hand, not touching the iron, but just feeling the air near it. The air is so hot, it almost stings your palm. It is a good sting. It is the feeling of life returning to your body after a day in the frozen woods. You feel a wave of sleepiness wash over you. The heat is making you drowsy, and you know that soon you will need to sit down. You take one last look at the dancing shadows on the ceiling and the red lines of the fire door. You are ready to move to the bench, to take off your boots, and to let the rest of the night unfold in the warmth of the shanty. Your journey into the heart of the camp is almost complete. You move away from the glowing red iron of the stove and take a few steps toward the long wooden bench. This is no ordinary bench. In the world of the lumberjack, this is called the Deacon Seat. It is a very important part of life in the shanty. It runs along the edge of the bunks, stretching almost the entire length of the roof. It is the place where everything happens once the sun goes down. It is where you eat, where you tell stories, and where you sit to think about the day behind you. The Deacon Seat is made from a single, massive log. The men took a giant pine tree and split it right down the middle lengthwise. They turned the flat side up and smoothed it down with their tools until it was level. Then they took smaller branches and made sturdy legs to hold it up. The wood is very thick, maybe 6 inches or more. It feels as solid as the ground itself. Because hundreds of men have sat here over many winters, the wood is not rough anymore. It has been worn down by the wool of 1,000 pairs of trousers. It feels as smooth as silk when you run your hand over it. You find a small space on the bench and sit down. As your weight hits the wood, you feel a massive wave of relief. Your legs have been working all day in the deep snow. Your muscles feel like they are made of hot lead. Sitting down is the best feeling in the world right now. You lean back a little bit, feeling the edge of the lower bunk against your spine. The wood of the seat is warm because it is so close to the big barrel stove. The heat travels through your thick trousers and into your tired muscles. It feels like the wood is drinking the tiredness out of your body. Here is a simple historical fact about this bench. It is called the Deacon Seat because in the old days, the deacon of a church was a very important person who sat in a special place. The Lumberjacks thought this bench was the most important place in their world, so they gave it a name that sounded grand and serious. Even though there is no church here in the middle of the frozen woods, the Deacon Seat is a place of respect. There is an unwritten rule that every man has his own spot on the bench and nobody takes another man's place. It is your little piece of home in the middle of the wild. You look down at your boots while you sit. This is a moment to look at a tiny bit of micro-history, the corks in your soles. Some people call them corks, but to you they are just corks. These are sharp steel spikes that are screwed into the bottom of your heavy leather boots. You need them so you do not slip when you are walking on frozen logs or icy paths. As you sit on the Deacon Seat, you can see the thousands of tiny little holes and scratches in the wood made by these spikes. The bench is covered in them. Each little mark is a record of a man who sat here before you. It looks like a map of all the winters this shanty has seen. You press your own spikes into the wood just a little bit, adding your own mark to the history of the camp. Now, you experience a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving. You stop thinking about the work tomorrow. You just sit. You listen to the sound of the fire and the breathing of the men around you. You look at the grain of the wood between your knees. The pine has beautiful swirls of dark brown and light gold. You follow one line with your eyes, watching it curve and twist like a frozen river. The world feels very still. In this silence, you feel like you are part of the building. You are not just a man sitting on a log. You are a part of the history of the North Woods. The silence is deep and heavy, like the snow outside, but it is a warm silence. It is the kind of quiet that makes you feel safe. The bench is wide enough that you can put your turkey bag down beside you. You reach out and touch the rough canvas. You feel the objects inside. You know that soon you will need to open it, but for now, you just enjoy the feeling of having your things close by. To your left, an older man is sitting with his head in his hands, resting. To your right, a younger boy is trying to fix a tear in his mitten with a bone needle. No one is talking. The Deacon's Seat is a place for quiet tasks. It is a place to transition from the hard work of the day to the deep sleep of the night. You can feel the air moving around you. The heat from the stove rises up, and the cooler air from the corners of the room flows in to take its place. This creates a very gentle breeze inside the shanty. It carries the smell of the drying wood and the salty scent of the pork being cooked in the next room. You look at the walls again. The logs are dark and shadows hide the corners. The light from the slush lamps makes the Deacon's Seat look like it is floating in a sea of orange glow. You rub your thighs with your hands. The wool of your trousers is scratchy and thick. You can feel the heat of your own skin through the fabric. Your knees feel stiff, and you know that tomorrow they will be sore, but that does not matter right now. Right now, you have the bench. You have the warmth. You have the safety of the shanty. You look at the space under the bench. There are dozens of pairs of boots lined up there, all covered in bits of ice and mud. They look like a small army of tired feet. The Deacon's Seat is more than just a place to sit. It is where you feel the strength of the crew. When you are out in the woods, the trees are huge and the forest is lonely. But when you are all sat together on this long split log, you feel like you are part of something big. You are a team. You are the men of the night shift, and you have conquered the cold for another day. You feel a sense of pride in your work and in your friends. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. The air is so warm it feels like a soft cloth against your face. You're starting to feel very drowsy. The long walk and the heavy heat are doing their work. You look at the muzzle-loader bunks behind you, filled with fresh hay. They look so inviting. But you stay on the bench for a little longer. You want to enjoy this feeling of being awake but relaxed. You want to feel the solid wood of the Deacon's Seat beneath you. It is the most comfortable chair you have ever known, even if it is just a split log in a drafty cabin. You reach down and begin to unlace your boots. The leather laces are wet and cold, and they are tied in tight knots. You work at them slowly, your fingers moving with a heavy, lazy rhythm. Each lace you undo feels like another step towards sleep. You pull the leather tongs back and feel the air hit your feet. It is a wonderful feeling. You are almost ready to let the day go. You are almost ready to move from the bench to the bed. But for now, you just sit, a shanty boy on his throne, watching the firelight dance on the ancient wood of the Deacon's Seat. The winter is outside, and you are exactly where you need to be. You pull your feet out of the heavy leather boots. The boots make a soft, wet sucking sound, as your heels come free. Your feet feel strangely light now, almost like they're floating. You are wearing 3 layers of socks. In this freezing weather, one pair is never enough. You have a thin pair of cotton socks against your skin, and over those, you have 2 thick pairs of woolen socks. These are not like the soft socks you might find in a shop today. These are heavy, scratchy, and handmade. You reach down and peel off the first thick layer. The wool is damp and cold to the touch. It has soaked up the sweat from your hard work and the melted snow that found its way past your boot tops. As you pull the sock away from your foot, you see a small cloud of steam rise up into the warm air of the shanty. Your skin underneath is red and glowing from the heat of the room. You move to the second layer. By the time you get down to your bare skin or your thin liner socks, your feet feel a wonderful sense of freedom. You wiggle your toes, feeling the warm air move between them. It is a simple thing, but after 10 hours in heavy boots, it feels like the best thing in the world. You stand up slowly and walk toward the barrel stove. Your feet feel soft on the hard-packed earth floor. You are heading for the drying racks. This is a microhistory detail that is the true sign of a logging camp. Above the big stove, hanging from the low-ceiling beams by bits of wire or rope, are long wooden poles. These poles are covered from one end to the other with socks, mittens, and hats. It looks like a forest of woolen clothes hanging in the air. Here is a simple historical fact. A lumberjack might own very few things, but he will always have many pairs of socks. In a camp of 60 men, there might be 300 pairs of socks hanging from those poles at any one time. This is because wet feet are the greatest enemy of the woodsman. If your feet stay wet in the cold, they will freeze, and you could lose your toes. Keeping your socks dry is a matter of life and death. The drying poles are the most crowded part of the bunkhouse, and there is a strict rule that you must never move another man's socks to make room for your own. You find a small empty spot on a pole near the end of the stove. You take your damp socks and drape them carefully over the smooth wood of the pole. You make sure they are spread out so the heat can reach every part of the wool. As soon as you let go, you see the steam begin to rise. It looks like thin white ribbons of smoke drifting up toward the roof. You stand there for a moment, watching your socks dry. You can feel the heat from the stove hitting your shins. It is a powerful, dry heat that makes the wool smell very strong. It is a scent of sheep, earth, and smoke. Now, we share a moment of atmospheric silence. You stand perfectly still under the hanging wool. You look up at the hundreds of socks. They are all different colors, grey, white, brown, and some with red stripes at the top. They are all perfectly still. The only movement in the room is the slow, swirling steam. The air is so quiet you can hear the soft drip-drip of water hitting the sandbox under the stove. It is a very peaceful sound. It is the sound of the day's dampness leaving the camp. You feel a deep sense of calm. The world outside is frozen and white, but here, everything is turning from wet and cold to warm and dry. You look at the wool closely. This wool comes from sheep back on the farms. It was spun into thick yarn by women who knew how to make clothes that would last a whole winter. You can see the tiny bits of dried grass and straw stuck in the weave of the wool. You can see where the heels have been darned. Darn a sock means to sew up a hole with more yarn, crisscrossing the threads to make the wool even thicker than it was before. Most of your socks have big patches on the heels and toes. They are lumpy and rough, but they are warm. There is another piece of clothing hanging nearby that you should know about. This is a bit of microhistory called the German sock. It is not really a sock at all, but a thick boot made entirely of pressed wool. It looks like a giant, heavy slipper. Men wear these inside their shoe packs, which are boots with rubber bottoms and leather tops. The German sock is the warmest thing a man can put on his feet. You see a pair of them hanging on the rack, looking heavy and solid. They are so thick they can almost stand up on their own. You feel the heat of the stove making your eyes heavy. The steam is everywhere, making the light from the lamps look soft and blurry. You look back at the Deacon Seat where the other men are sitting. Some of them are holding their bare feet out toward the fire, rubbing them to get the blood moving. You see the calluses on their hands and the tired lines on their faces. Everyone is focused on the same thing, getting dry. In the woods, being dry is a luxury. It is more important than money or fame. You reach up and touch your socks one last time. They are already starting to feel warmer. The wool is becoming stiff as the water evaporates. By the time the morning whistle blows, these socks will be bone dry and toasted warm by the fire. Putting on warm, dry socks in the morning is the only thing that makes the thought of going back out into the snow bearable. It is a small spark of comfort in a very hard life. You look at the floor near the stove. There are small puddles of water everywhere from the melting snow on the boots. The ground is dark and damp. You step carefully around the puddles as you walk back toward the bench. Your feet feel strange and sensitive on the dirt floor without the thick wool to protect them. You feel every little bump and piece of wood chip. It makes you feel connected to the earth. The shanty is a world of simple needs. You need food, you need fire, and you need dry clothes. Tonight you have all three. You look at the long line of socks hanging like a low ceiling over the room. They represent the night shift at rest. While the men sleep, the stove will work, pulling the moisture out of the wool and preparing it for another day of battle against the frost. You feel a wave of gratitude for the sheep, the women who knitted the socks, and the man who kept the fire burning. You sit back down on the deacon seat. You lean your head back against the bunk and close your eyes. The smell of the wet wool is all around you, but it doesn't bother you. It is a familiar, safe smell. It is the smell of a place where men are cared for. You listen to the fire growling in the barrel stove, and the soft rustle of the hanging socks as the heat moves them ever so slightly. You are warm, you are drying out, and you are ready for the next part of your night. The deadly winter is still out there, but in here, the steam is rising, and the cold is losing its grip on you. You lean your head back until it touches the rough bark of the log wall. The wood is cool against your hair, but you can feel a very faint shaking. It is a tiny, steady vibration. This is the wind. Outside, the world is not quiet anymore. The night shift of the forest has changed. A storm is moving in from the north, and it is hitting the shanty with all its strength. You close your eyes and just listen. The sound is like a great, heavy machine moving through the trees. The wind has many different voices. Sometimes it is a high, thin whistle. This happens when the air finds a tiny hole in the moss or a small gap near the roof. It sounds like a ghost crying in the dark. Other times, the wind is a deep, low growl. It hits the side of the building like a giant shoulder, trying to push the logs over. But the logs do not move. They were notched and fitted by hand to be strong. You feel very small sitting there, listening to a force of nature that could freeze a man in minutes. Inside the shanty, the air is still and warm, but the sound of the storm makes the warmth feel even better. You hear the snow hitting the walls. It does not sound soft like it does when it falls on a meadow. Because the wind is so fast, the snowflakes are like tiny pieces of sand. They hit the wood with a dry hissing sound. Shh, shh, shh. Ah, shh, shh. Ah, ah. It sounds like the forest is trying to whisper a secret to you. You know that out there, the snow is piling up against the door, making a drift that might be as high as a man's chest by morning. Here is a simple historical fact about where you are sitting. The men who pick the spot for a logging camp are very clever. They do not build on the top of a hill where the view is good. They build in a hollow or a low spot in the land. They look for a place where a big cliff or a thick group of cedar trees will act as a windbreak. A windbreak is like a giant wall that slows down the gale before it hits the cabin. Even with the windbreak, the storm is loud, but without it, the shanty might have its roof blown clean off. You reach into your turkey bag and pull out a small, heavy object. This is a microhistory detail called a whetstone. It is a flapped grey stone about the size of your hand. It feels smooth and a bit oily. Every lumberjack carries one. During the day, your axe hits hardwood and sometimes knots that are as tough as iron. This makes the edge of the blade dull. As you listen to the wind, you begin to rub the stone against your axe head. The sound of the stone on the metal is a soft, rhythmic zip, zip, zip. It is a peaceful sound that cuts through the roar of the wind outside. You are not just sitting, you are preparing. A sharp axe is the only way to stay safe when you are working with the big pines. Now, there is a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop rubbing the stone. You hold your breath. For a few seconds, the wind seems to stop too. Everything goes perfectly quiet. In this silence, you can hear the heart of the wood. You hear a tiny creak from the roof beams. You hear the sand shifting under the stove. It feels like the whole building is taking a breath along with you. It is a moment where you feel completely connected to the logs, the fire, and the earth. Then, the wind returns with a sudden thump, and the world of sound begins again. you think about the Great North Wind. The men in the camp have many names for it. Some call it the Blue Whistler because it is so cold it turns your skin blue. Others call it the Timber Wolf because of how it howls through the branches. To you, it just sounds like the breath of the winter itself. You hear the tall pines outside swaying. When a big tree moves in the wind, it makes a sound like a heavy door opening on a rusty hinge. Greedy, ack. Sometimes you hear a frost crack again, that loud bang that sounds like a tree exploding. It reminds you that out there the cold is so strong it is breaking the very bones of the forest. You look at the chinking between the logs, that green moss you saw earlier. In some spots, you can see a tiny bit of the moss moving. The wind is pushing so hard that it is finding its way through the mud and trying to wiggle the moss. You see a tiny puff of white frost grow on the inside of the log. It looks like a little flower made of ice. You reach out and touch it with your thumb. It vanishes instantly, turned to water by the heat of your skin. It is a reminder of how close the deadly winter really is. It is only 6 inches away, separated from you by a piece of wood and some frozen mud. Further down the bench, you see a man leaning his ear against the wall. He is listening to the horses. The hovel, which is the stable where the big workhorses sleep, is built right next to the bunkhouse. Sometimes they share a wall so the heat from the horses helps keep the men warm and the heat from the stove helps the horses. You can hear a muffled thud there, the sound of a horse stamping its heavy hoof on the straw. It is a comforting sound. It means the animals are safe and dry, just like you. The sound of the wind makes you feel like you are in a boat on a rough sea. The shanty is your ship, and it is sailing through a white ocean of snow. You feel the strength of the community around you. If you were out there alone, the sound of the wind would be terrifying. It would be the sound of an enemy. But here, with 60 other men and a roaring fire, the wind is just a story. It is something to talk about while you dry your socks. It is a background noise that makes the inside of the cabin feel even more like a sanctuary. You put your whetstone back into your bag. Your axe blade is now smooth and ready for the morning. You feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You have done your work, and you have taken care of your tools. You listen to the wind one last time. It seems to be getting even louder, throwing big handfuls of snow against the small glass window. The glass rattles in its wooden frame. You watch a single drop of water run down the pane. It is melting from the heat inside. You feel a heavy sleepiness starting to pull at your eyelids. The sound of the storm is like a lullaby now. It is a loud, wild song, but it is one that tells you to stay put and rest. You are not going anywhere tonight. The forest belongs to the wind right now, and the shanty belongs to you. You lean your head back against the log wall again. The vibration is still there, a soft humming in the wood. You let it rock you gently. You are safe. The walls are thick, the moss is tight, and the night shift is tucked away from the storm. You are ready to let the sound of the wind fade into the background as you think about the warm supper that is coming soon. You hear a heavy wooden bell ringing outside. It is not a real bell made of metal, but a Gabriel. This is a microhistory detail of the Campe long piece of iron, or a heavy wooden board that the cook hits with a mallet. The sound is flat and loud, cutting through the roar of the wind. It is the signal you have been waiting for. It is time for supper. You do not have to go outside to get to the cookroom. In many camps, the bunkhouse and the cookhouse are connected by a short, covered walkway called a dingle. This keeps the snow off your head and the heat in the buildings. You walk into the cookroom and the smell hits you like a warm wave. It is much stronger here than in the bunkhouse. The first thing you notice is the smell of salt pork. This is the main meat for the lumberjacks. It is pork that has been kept in big barrels of salt and water to keep it from going bad. The cook fries it in big iron pans until it is crispy and brown. It is very salty and very fatty, which is exactly what you need. When you work in the cold all day, your body burns energy like a furnace. You need that fat to keep you going. You take your seat at a long wooden table. The table is made of thick boards, worn smooth and white from being scrubbed every day. There are no chairs, only long benches. You sit close to the man next to you. There is a very important rule in the cookhouse: no talking. This is a simple historical fact of the logging camps. The cook is the boss of this room, and he wants the men to eat quickly and get out so he can clean up. If you talk, you are wasting time. The only sounds you hear are the clatter of tin plates, the scrape of metal spoons, and the heavy breathing of hungry men. On your plate, you have a big pile of baked beans. These are not like the beans you find in a tin today. These have been cooking for 24 hours in a big iron pot, buried in a hole with hot coals. This is called beanhole cooking. The beans are thick, sweet, and smoky. They have bits of salt pork and molasses mixed in. They're warm and soft, and they taste like the best thing you have ever eaten. You use a big piece of shanty bread to soak up the juice. The bread is heavy and yellow, made with cornmeal or sourdough. It is so thick you could almost use it as a hammer, but it is delicious and filling. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop eating for a second and look down the long table. You see 60 men, all moving their spoons at the same time. The steam from the food rises up and mixes with the light from the lanterns. It creates a warm, golden fog over the table. You can hear the wind hitting the roof of the cookroom. But in here, there is only the sound of a community eating together. It is a very peaceful, busy silence. You feel a deep sense of belonging. You are all part of the same night shift, and you are all sharing the same fuel. You reach for the molasses jug. This is another small bit of history. Sugar is very expensive and hard to bring into the woods, so the men use molasses for everything. It is a thick, dark syrup that looks like black oil. You pour it over your bread and even over your beans. It gives you a quick burst of energy and helps keep your blood moving in the cold. It has a deep, slightly bitter taste that you grow to love. Everything in the camp tastes of wood smoke and molasses. Next to your plate is a large tin mug of Shanty tea. This tea is as black as ink and strong enough to jump out of the cup. The cook boils it in a giant pot with handfuls of tea leaves and sometimes a bit of pine bark for flavour. It is very hot. You have to blow on it to keep from burning your tongue. As you take a sip, you feel the heat go all the way down to your toes. It washes away the salt from the pork and the sweetness of the molasses. It makes you feel alert and warm from the inside out. The cook moves behind the table, carrying a large tray of ginger snaps. These are hard, spicy cookies that are as big as your hand. They are full of ginger and cloves, which help settle your stomach after the heavy meal. You take two. They are so hard, you have to dip them in your tea to soften them up. This is a common sight in the cookroom, dozens of men dunking their cookies into their tin mugs at the exact same time. It is a silent dance that everyone knows. You look at the cookie, who is the cook's young helper. He is running back and forth with big pitchers of water and plates of food. He is only 14 years old, but he works harder than anyone. He has to stay up late to wash all these tin plates and get up at 3 in the morning to start the fires. Seeing him work reminds you that everyone in this camp has a job to do. Without the cook and the cookie, the lumberjacks would not last a week in the frozen woods. They are the ones who keep the night shift fed and strong. You finish your beans and your pork. You feel your stomach tighten with the weight of the food. It is a good feeling. It is the feeling of safety. When your belly is full, the cold outside doesn't seem so scary anymore. You wipe your plate clean with the last bit of bread. You look at the man across from you. He gives you a small nod. No words are needed. You both know that the meal was good and the work was hard. The cook knocks on the table with a wooden spoon. This is the signal that supper is over. One by one, the men stand up and slide over the benches. You pick up your tin mug and give it a quick rinse in a bucket of hot water near the door. You walk back through the dingle toward the bunkhouse. The air in the walkway is cold, but you don't mind. You have a furnace of hot beans and tea inside you now. As you step back into the main shanty, the smell of the pine and the tobacco greets you again. You find your spot on the Deacon Seat. You feel heavy and slow, like a bear getting ready to hibernate for the winter. The supper has done its job. Your muscles feel less sore. Your mind feels calm. You watch the cookee bring in a final bucket of water for the morning. The night shift is moving toward its end. You are full, you are warm, and the deep sleep of the woodsman is calling to you. The shanty is much dimmer now that the sun has been down for hours. The light doesn't come from bright bulbs, but from a few small lamps scattered around the room. These are slush lamps, a name every shanty boy knows well. They're simple things, just old tin cans or small iron pots filled with grease. A piece of twisted cotton rag or even a bit of old rope sits in the grease, acting as a wick. When the wick is lit, it burns with a soft orange flame that flickers every time someone moves or the wind whistles through a crack in the logs. The light from these lamps is very gentle. It does not reach into the corners of the room, which stay tucked away in deep velvet shadows. Instead, the light pools around the Deacon Seat and the barrel stove. It makes everything look golden and soft. You watch the flame of the lamp nearest to you. It is a tiny dancing triangle of fire. It moves back and forth, casting long, shaky shadows of the men against the rough log walls. The shadows look like giants, moving slowly as the men lean over to fix a boot or light a pipe. In this soft light, the textures of the shanty come alive. You can see the rough shaggy bark on the logs that haven't been peeled. You can see the shiny golden spots where the pine resin has hardened like a jewel. The light reflects off the tin mugs and the polished steel of the axe heads hanging on the wall. It is a world of warm colours, browns, oranges, and deep reds. It is very easy on your eyes, after a day spent in the snow-blind white of the forest, where the sun reflects off the ice like a mirror. This dimness feels like a cool cloth on your forehead. Here is a simple historical fact about the lighting in a logging camp. Because the shanty is made of dry wood and filled with hay and wool, fire is a very big danger. The lamps are often hung from the ceiling by wires or set in stable wooden boxes so they cannot be easily knocked over. There are no fancy glass lamps here, because glass breaks too easily in the cold or when the camp moves. The slush lamp is used because it is cheap, and the fuel animal fat is something the cook always has in the kitchen. It is a humble light for a humble home. You look at a specific microhistory detail, the lucifer. This is an old name for a match. They are kept in a dry tin box near the stove to keep them away from the damp air. You watch a man reach for one. He strikes it against the side of the stove, and there is a sudden scritch sound and a bright flare of blue and yellow light. For a second, his face is lit up clearly. You see the deep lines around his eyes and the grey in his beard. Then he lights his pipe, and the bright flare is gone, replaced by the steady low glow of the burning tobacco. Now we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop looking at the men and just watch the shadows on the ceiling. Because the air in the shanty is always moving from the heat of the stove, the shadows never sit still. They swirl and drift like smoke. It is very quiet. The only sound is the soft crackle of the lamps and the distant muffled howl of the wind outside. You feel like you are in a dream. The world of work and trees feels 1,000 miles away. In this soft light, the shanty feels like a safe, secret cave where the winter can never find you. The dimness helps the men relax. When you can't see everything clearly, your brain stops worrying about the small things. You don't see the dirt on the floor or the fraying edges of your blankets. You only see the warmth. You see the steam rising from the tea mugs, looking like ghostly fingers reaching up into the dark. You see the way the light catches the steam from the drying socks, creating a soft halo of white mist above the stove. It is a very beautiful sight, even if it is just made of wet wall and heat. You notice how the light changes near the door. The frost on the nail heads in the wood shines like tiny diamonds. The cold air trying to seep in makes the lamp flame near the entrance jump and duck. It is a battle between the golden light of the lamp and the blue dark of the winter. But the lamp holds its ground. It keeps its little circle of warmth alive. You feel a sense of peace watching it. It reminds you that even a small light can keep a lot of darkness away. The cookie comes around with a long stick to trim the wicks. He snips off the burnt ends so the lamps don't smoke too much. This makes the light a little brighter for a moment. You see the faces of your friends more clearly. They look calm. Some have their eyes closed already, even though they are still sitting up. The soft light is like a heavy blanket, pushing everyone towards sleep. It is the natural rhythm of the night shift. When the light goes low, the energy of the camp goes low with it. You look down at your hands in the lamplight. They are stained with the dark pitch of the trees and have small scars from the brush. In this orange glow, they look like the hands of an old statue. You feel the history of your work in your fingers. You are a person who builds and cuts, and tonight you are a person who rests. You fold your hands in your lap and let your breathing slow down. You are moving in time with the flickering flames. The shanty is a place of many shadows, but none of them are scary. They are the shadows of your brothers and your home. They are the shadows of the fire that keeps you alive. You feel a deep warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the stove. It is the feeling of being safe in the dark. You know that soon the last lamp will be blown out, and the room will be lit only by the red eye of the stove. But for now, you enjoy the soft, golden world of the slush lamps. You lean your head back and watch a shadow dance across a high beam. It looks like a bird in flight. You follow it until your eyes feel too heavy to stay open. The soft light has done its work. It has turned a rough log cabin into a place of peace. You are ready for the quiet talk of the men to lead you further into the night. The winter is still roaring outside, but in here the little lamps are holding the world still and warm just for you. The shanty is a place of stories. Now that supper is over and the socks are hanging to dry, a quiet murmur fills the room. It is not a loud noise. It is the sound of men talking in low voices, their words mixing with the crackle of the fire. When you spend all day working in the forest, you do not talk much. The work is too hard and the trees are too tall. But here, on the Deacon Seat, the silence of the woods is broken. You lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees, and listen to the talk. Most of the talk is about the work. You hear men discussing the king pine they saw today, a tree so big it would take 4 men with their arms spread wide to reach around it. They talk about the skid roads and how the ice is holding up. If the ice gets too thin, the big sleds will sink into the mud. If it gets too thick, it is hard for the horses to find their footing. This is the business of the camp. It is the talk of the night shift, planning how to move mountains of wood when the sun comes up. But as the night gets deeper, the talk changes. It becomes softer and moves away from the woods. You hear a man at the end of the bench talking about his farm back in the valley. He talks about his wife's apple pie and the way his dog sleeps by the door. These are the things that keep a man going when the frost is biting his ears. You don't need to see his face to know he is smiling. You can hear it in his voice. It is a warm, gentle sound that makes everyone feel a little bit closer to home. Here is a simple historical fact about how these men communicated. Because the logging camps were so far away from towns, there was no post office. If a man wanted to send a letter, he had to wait for the tote ting, the horses that brought in the food, to take it back to the nearest village. Because of this, stories and news were passed by word of mouth. If a new man joined the crew, he was treated like a king for the first night, because he brought news from the outside world. He was the newspaper for the shanty. You look at an older man sitting near the lamp. He is holding a small carved piece of wood. This is a microhistory detail called a ball in a cage. It is a toy made from a single piece of pine, using only a sharp pocket knife. The man has carved a small wooden ball inside a tiny wooden box with bars. The ball can move around, but it can never come out. It takes many nights of quiet sitting to finish one. He doesn't say much. He just whistles softly as he works. The shave, shave, shave of his knife is a peaceful rhythm that fits perfectly with the quiet talk around him. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop listening to the words and just listen to the sound of the voices. They rise and fall like the wind in the trees. You don't even need to know what they are saying to feel the comfort of it. It is the sound of humans huddling together against the dark. In this moment, you feel a deep sense of safety. The voices are like a wall of sound that keeps the loneliness of the forest away. You watch the smoke from a pipe drift up into the shadows, and you feel perfectly at peace. Sometimes the talk turns into a song. There is usually one man in the camp who can play the fiddle or the mouth organ, which you might call a harmonica. He pulls it from his pocket and plays a slow, sad tune. It is not a song for dancing. It is a song for remembering. The music is thin and sweet, echoing off the log walls. You see the men tapping their feet softly on the dirt floor. No one sings along with words, but many men hum under their breath. The music fills the gaps between the stories, making the shanty feel like a much larger, grander place. You hear a story about a Paul Bunyan. Some of the younger men believe these tales of a giant lumberjack and his blue ox. They talk about how he could clear a whole forest with one swing of his axe. The older men laugh softly and shake their heads, but they still listen. These stories are part of the night shift too. They make the hard work seem a little bit smaller. If a giant can move a mountain, then surely 60 men can move a few thousand logs. It is a way to make the impossible feel possible. There are no arguments here tonight. The camp has a rule about that too. If men fight, they are sent away. In the middle of a deadly winter, you cannot afford to have enemies inside the house. You need the man sitting next to you to help you move a log or watch your back when a tree is falling. So, the talk is always kind, or at least quiet. You feel the respect in the room. It is a quiet, heavy respect earned through sweat and cold. The smell of the tobacco smoke gets thicker as more men join the talk. It is a spicy, rich smell that hangs in the air. You see the Kuki sitting in the corner, listening with wide eyes. He is learning what it means to be a man of the woods. He is learning the history of the camp through these stories. You realize that you are part of that history now. Your stories will be told by someone else next year, sitting on this same Deacon Seat. You feel a sense of weight in your limbs. The talking is slowing down now. The stories are getting shorter. The fiddle player puts his instrument back in its velvet-lined box. One by one, the men are standing up to stretch. The night shift talk is coming to an end. It has done its job. It has warmed your heart as much as the stove warmed your skin. It has reminded you that you are not alone in the wilderness. You take a deep breath of the smoky air. You feel a smile touch your lips. You didn't say much tonight, but you listened well. And in the shanty, listening is just as important as talking. You feel ready to leave the bench now. You have shared the food, you have dried your clothes, and you have heard the songs of your brothers. The deep, heavy dark of the bunks is waiting for you. You stand up slowly, feeling the solid floor beneath your feet, and prepare to make your bed for the night. The stories are over, and the dreams are about to begin. You turn away from the Deacon Seat and look at your bed. In a logging camp, the beds are not made of soft feathers or springy metal. They are made of the things the men can find in the forest. Your bed is a wooden box built into the wall, and it is filled with hay. This evening, it is time to fix your bedding. Over a few weeks, the hay gets crushed down by the weight of your body. It becomes thin and hard. To sleep warm, you must make the hay fluffy again. You reach into the wooden frame of the bunk. The hay feels dry and brittle. This is marsh hay, a microhistory detail that is very important for a good night's sleep. During the late summer, men go to the wet meadows near the rivers and cut this long, tough grass. They dry it in the sun until it is golden and sweet-smelling. Then they bring it to the camp in big wagons. This marsh hay is better than the straw from a farm because it is springy. It doesn't break into tiny dusty bits as easily. You grab a handful and pull it upward, shaking it to let the air get between the stalks. As you work the hay with your hands, the smell of a summer meadow fills your nose. It is a strange smell to have in the middle of a blizzard. It smells of sunshine, dried clover, and warm earth. It is a clean, dusty scent that makes you think of bees and green leaves. You spend a long time moving the hay around. You want to make sure there are no lumps. If there is a big knot of hay under your hip, you will wake up sore in the morning. You make a little hollow in the middle for your body to rest in, and you pile the hay higher at the edges to keep the drafts out. Here is a simple historical fact about these beds. The men did not have individual mattresses. Instead, the hay was spread across the whole bunk deck. This was a long platform made of poles that ran the length of the wall. To keep the hay from sliding around, the men used divider boards. These were just simple planks of wood set on their edge. Your bed is really just the space between two of these boards. It is only about 2 feet wide. It is a very small space, but when it is filled with fresh, soft hay, it feels like a soft nest. You take a moment of atmospheric silence now. You stop moving the hay and just lean your arms on the edge of the bunk. You look at the golden stalks reflecting the light of the stove. The room has gone very quiet. You can hear the hay settling as the air leaves it. It makes a tiny, rustling sound, like a mouse moving through a field. In this silence, you feel the peace of the camp. The hard work of the day is truly over. You're preparing your place of rest, and there is something very calming about the simple task of making a bed out of grass. You reach into your turkey bag and pull out your blankets. These are not thin sheets. These are double-weight woolen blankets. They are very heavy and a deep dark grey colour. They feel rough against your skin, but they are the best things for keeping the heat in. You spread the first blanket over the hay. You tuck the edges deep into the corners of the wooden frame. This creates a shell that holds the hay in place. You want to make sure the hay doesn't poke through the wool and tickle your skin while you try to sleep. You look at the wood of the bunk itself. It is made of peeled poles. These are small spruce trees that have had their bark stripped off with a knife. The wood is white and smooth. You can see the marks where the knife slipped, or where a knot was smoothed down. The poles are held together with wooden pegs or heavy iron nails. It is a very strong structure. It has to be because it might hold 4 or 5 men in a row, all sleeping side by side. You run your hand along the top pole. It feels cool and solid. It is the frame of your little world for the next few hours. There is a smell of dust in the air now, from moving the hay. It mixes with the smell of the pine and the tobacco. It is not an unpleasant smell. It is the smell of a barn or a stable. It reminds you that in the woods, humans and animals live very similar lives. You both work hard in the cold, and you both sleep on the harvest of the summer. You feel a connection to the earth as you pat the hay down one last time. It feels springy and thick. You know it will keep the cold from coming up through the floor. You notice that some of the other men are doing the same thing. They are fluffing their nests. You see the dust motes dancing in the lamplight around their bunks. Everyone is quiet, focused on their own comfort. There is no more talking now. The time for stories is over. The energy of the room is changing. It is becoming slow and heavy. The night shift is moving from the bench to the bedding. You feel a yawn stretching your jaw. The warmth of the room and the smell of the hay are making it hard to stay awake. You take your second blanket and fold it at the foot of the bunk. You will pull this over yourself once you are inside. You also have a small pillow. It is not filled with down or feathers. It is just a small canvas bag stuffed with extra woolen socks or maybe some soft cedar shavings. It is hard, but it supports your neck. You place it at the head of the bunk, right against the log wall. You can see the moss in the cracks of the wall just inches from where your head will be. You know that moss is the only thing between you and the freezing night. You stand back and look at your work. The bed looks soft and inviting. The hay is piled high, and the grey blankets look thick and warm. It is a simple bed, but to a tired lumberjack, it looks better than a bed in a palace. You have made a place where you can disappear for a few hours. You have made a place where the winter cannot reach you. You feel a sense of pride in how you have taken care of yourself. Even in the middle of the wilderness, you have found a way to be comfortable. You take a deep breath, smelling the last of the sweet hay dust. You feel the weight of your body pressing down into your feet, and you know it is time to climb in. You are ready to leave the world of the upright and the walking. You are ready to join the long line of men resting in the shadows. Your bed is fixed, your blankets are ready, and the hay is waiting to hold you. You take one last look at the red glow of the stove before you prepare to crawl into your narrow, warm home for the night. You are now ready to leave the warm air of the room and climb into your bunk. This is not like a bed at home where you climb in from the side. This is what the men call a muzzle-loader bunk. This name comes from the old guns that men used to use. To load those guns, you had to push the powder and the ball in through the front end, or the muzzle. These beds are the same. They're built so close together that there is no space between them. The only way to get into your bed is to climb in through the foot of the bunk, sliding yourself in feet first, like a bullet going into a rifle. You stand at the end of the wooden frame. The opening is narrow, and the hay is piled high. You have to sit on the edge of the Deacon Seat, and then swing your legs up. You push your feet deep into the dark tunnel of the bunk. The hay rustles and crunches as you move. It is a bit of a squeeze. The space is only about 2 feet wide and maybe 3 feet high. It feels very tight at first, like you are crawling into a small wooden cave. But as you slide further in, you feel the warmth that has been trapped in the hay and the blankets. It is a thick, heavy heat that feels very good on your tired legs. Here is a simple historical fact about why these bunks were built this way. In the big logging camps, space was very important. By building the bunks as muzzle loaders, the men could fit twice as many people into the shanty. If the beds opened from the side, you would need walkways between them, and that would let the cold air move around too much. With the muzzle-loader style, the men sleep side by side in one long solid row. This keeps everyone much warmer because there are no gaps for the frost to hide in. It is a clever way to use every inch of the log cabin to keep the deadly winter away. You pull yourself forward until your head is near the log wall. You are lying on your back now, looking up at the bottom of the bunk above you. The wood is only a few inches from your face. You can see the rough grain of the spruce poles and the tiny drips of dried sap. It feels very private in here, even though there are 60 men in the room. Inside your muzzle-loader, you are in your own little world. You can hear the sounds of the camp, but they feel far away, like you are listening from deep inside a tree. You reach for a specific microhistory detail, the spread. In many camps, the blankets are not just for one person. They are huge, wide pieces of wool that spread across 3 or 4 men at once. This is done to share body heat. You feel the heavy weight of the shared wool as you pull it up to your chin. It is so thick that it feels like a heavy hand pressing you down into the hay. You can feel the heat from the man sleeping next to you. In the woods, your friends are your heaters. By sleeping close together under one big spread, you make sure that no one's blood turns to ice during the long dark night. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still. You do not move a finger. You just listen to your own breathing. It is slow and steady. You can hear the tiny sounds of the hay stalks breaking under your weight. Snap. Crackle. Outside the bunk, you hear the distant clink of the stove door and the low moan of the wind. But in here, it is silent. You feel the darkness of the bunk wrapping around you like a soft velvet glove. It is a moment of pure rest. You are not a worker. You are not a shanty boy. You are just a soul resting in the heart of the forest. The smell inside the bunk is different from the rest of the shanty. It is very concentrated. You smell the sweet, dry scent of the marsh hay. You smell the oily wool of the blankets, and because your head is so close to the wall, you smell the fresh, cold scent of the pine logs. Every time the wind hits the outside of the cabin, a tiny bit of that cold forest smell leaks through the moss and reaches your nose. It is a clean, sharp smell that reminds you of how lucky you are to be under the blankets. You feel a deep sense of safety. The logs are thick, and they're holding the night back. You shift your weight a little to get comfortable. The hay is springy and soft. It shapes itself to your body, holding your shoulders and your hips. You feel the tiredness flowing out of your muscles and into the bedding. Your feet, which were so cold just an hour ago, are now toasted and warm. You wiggle your toes against the wool. It feels wonderful. You realize that you don't need a fancy house or a soft mattress to be happy. All you need is a dry place to lie down and a heavy blanket to keep the frost away. You look out the muzzle of your bunk, the opening where you crawled in. You can see a small slice of the shanty. You see the orange glow of the barrel stove reflecting off the floor. You see the shadows of the drying socks moving on the ceiling. It looks like a puppet show. The light is dim and flickering. It is very peaceful to watch the world from the safety of your wooden cave. You feel like a bear in a den. The winter can roar all at once, but it cannot get in here. You are tucked away, hidden in the hay and the shadows. You think about the night shift that is still happening outside. The wind is still moving the snow. The frost is still cracking the trees. But for you, the shift is over. You have done your part. You have earned this narrow space. You feel a sense of companionship with the men sleeping in the bunks next to yours. You are all part of the same long row of sleepers. You are all breathing the same air and dreaming the same dreams of spring. The weight of the blankets is making it hard to keep your eyes open. The darkness of the bunk is pulling at your mind, inviting you to let go. You pull the edge of the wool a little higher, tucking it under your ear. The wool is scratchy, but you don't mind. It is a familiar, honest feeling. You close your eyes and let the warmth of the spread fill your whole body. You are no longer cold. You are no longer tired. You are just a part of the quiet sleeping camp. You take one last deep breath at the hay-scented air. You feel your heart beating slowly against the hay. You are ready to sink deeper into the night. The muzzle-loader has gathered you in, and it is holding you safe. The deadly winter is just a sound now, a distant noise that has nothing to do with you. You are in your nest, you are warm, and the deep sleep of the North Woods is finally here to take you away. You are now tucked deep inside the muzzle-loader bunk, and the full weight of the blankets is resting upon you. In the world of the North Woods, these are not called blankets. They are called quilts or comforters, and they are the most important tools for a night of survival. Because you are sharing your bed with the men on either side of you, you are all tucked under a single, massive piece of fabric. This is the spread we spoke of, but now you can truly feel it. It is made of many layers of heavy wool that have been stitched together. It is so thick that it feels like a heavy coat of armor made of cloth. The heat under this spread is incredible. It is not like the heat from the stove, which can feel sharp and dry. This is a soft, moist heat created by your own bodies. As you lie there, you feel the warmth from the man to your left and the man to your right. You are all huddled together like a family of bears in a den. This shared heat is a simple historical fact of the lumber camps. In a time before modern heaters, humans were the best source of warmth. By sleeping close together, you make sure that the heat stays trapped under the heavy wool. Even if the fire in the stove were to go low, the spread would keep you warm enough to survive until the morning. The texture of the blanket is very rough. It is made from virgin wool, which means the wool has not been treated with chemicals to make it soft. It still has the natural oils from the sheep inside the fibers. You can feel the scratchy wool against your neck and your hands. It is a bit itchy at first, but you quickly grow to love the feeling. It reminds you that the blanket is strong and honest. It is built for work, just like you. You pull the edge of the blanket up so that only your nose and eyes are peeking out. The wool creates a little tent over your head, trapping your own warm breath. As you settle in, you notice a specific microhistory detail, the blanket pin. Because the spread is so heavy and there are many men moving under it, it can sometimes slide off during the night. To prevent this, the men use large pins made of bone or wood. They pin the edges of the blankets to the hay or the wooden divider boards of the bunk. This keeps the warmth envelope sealed tight. You can see the dark shape of the pin near your shoulder, holding the world of the blankets in place. It is a small thing, but it means you won't wake up with a cold draft hitting your back in the middle of the night. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving entirely. You let your muscles go completely limp. In the darkness of the bunk, you can feel the rhythm of the men around you. You hear a slow, deep breath to your left. You hear a soft sigh to your right. Everyone is relaxing at the exact same time. It feels like the whole row of men is becoming one single living thing. You feel a deep sense of connection. You are not alone in the dark. You are surrounded by your brothers. The silence is heavy and warm, like the blankets themselves. The smell under the blankets is very strong. It is the smell of lanolin, which is the natural oil from the sheep's wool. It has a heavy, earthy scent that is slightly sweet. Mixed with this is the scent of the pine logs from the wall, and the faint smell of wood smoke that has followed you into bed. It is a comforting, ancient smell. It is the scent of safety and rest. You breathe it in deeply, and it feels like the air itself is feeding your tired body. You feel the tension leaving your jaw and your shoulders. The heavy wall is pressing all the stress of the day out of you. You look at the spread again in the dim light. It is a dull grey colour, but you can see the red and blue threads of the stitching. This blanket was likely made by a group of women in a far-off town, working together to sew something strong enough for the night shift. You feel a sense of gratitude for their work. They knew that a man's life might depend on how well they sewed these layers together. Every stitch is a promise of warmth. You run your fingers over a seam, feeling the thickness of the thread. It is a sturdy, reliable piece of history. You feel a wave of heat move through your legs. Your feet are finally truly warm. In the woods, your feet are often cold all day long, even inside your heavy boots. But now, they are buried in the hay and wrapped in the wool. It feels like they are being bathed in warm water. You can feel the blood pulsing in your toes. It is a wonderful, tingly feeling. You know that the deadly winter is still trying to get in, but it is failing. The blankets are winning the battle. You feel a sense of victory as you snuggle deeper into the warmth. The darkness under the spread is perfect. It is not a scary darkness. It is a resting darkness. It shuts out the flickering light of the lamps and the shadows of the drying socks. It is just you and the heat. You feel like you are back in the womb, safe from the world. The sounds of the shanty, the ticking of the stove, the rattle of the window feel like they are coming from a different planet. You are in the heart of the spread, and nothing can touch you here. You shift your weight one last time, finding the perfect spot in the hay. You feel the heavy wool settle over your hip, pinning you gently into place. You are so warm now that you feel a little bit like you are melting. Your mind is starting to wander, drifting away from the logs and the trees. You think about how strange it is that a piece of wool and a few friends can make a frozen forest feel like a paradise. You take a long, slow breath. The wool tickles your nose, but you don't move. You are too comfortable to move. You feel the weight of the blankets becoming part of your own weight. You are sinking, drifting, and falling into the soft, grey world of sleep. The shared warmth is a miracle of the woods, and you are right in the middle of it. The night shift is quiet now. The work is done. The warmth is here. You are ready to let go. As you lie there under the heavy wool spread, you notice how the air in the shanty has changed. It is no longer just warm. It has become thick and moist. In the logging camps, this is what the men called a shanty steam. It is a simple historical fact that when 60 men, all wearing wet wool and breathing deeply, gather in a small log room with a giant fire, the air turns into a kind of tropical fog. This steam is not a bad thing. In the middle of a deadly winter, the dry air of the forest can make your throat sore and your skin crack, but this thick, moist air feels like a soft cloth on your face. The steam comes from everywhere. You can see it rising in thin, ghostly ribbons from the long lines of socks and mittens hanging over the stove. It comes from the big pot of water bubbling on the iron lid of the barrel stove. It even comes from your own breath and the breath of the men sleeping beside you. The air is so full of water that the light from the last few lamps looks blurry, as if you were looking through a piece of frosted glass. It makes the whole bunkhouse feel soft and round, with no sharp edges or dark, scary corners. You look at a specific microhistory detail, the frost line on the door. Even though the air inside is steamy and hot, the wood of the door is still very cold. Where the warm, moist air touches the cold wood, the water turns straight into ice. You can see a thick white crust of frost growing around the edges of the door and on the big iron latch. It looks like white fur. This tells you how hard the night shift of the heat is working. The steam is pushing against the cold, trying to keep the shanty a place of life. You watch a single drop of water run down a nearby log, looking like a silver bead in the dim light. Now we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still and just breathe. You feel the heavy, moist air filling your lungs. It is very easy to breathe. You don't have to fight the cold or the wind anymore. You listen to the soft hiss of the steam escaping from the pot on the stove. It is a steady, rhythmic sound that matches the heartbeat of the camp. In this silence, you feel like the shanty is a giant, living thing. It is breathing along with you. The steam is its breath, and the fire is its heart. You feel safe and tucked away from the world. The smell of the steam is a mixture of everything in the camp. It smells of the sweet marsh hay in your bunk. It smells of the pine resin in the walls. It even carries the faint, salty scent of the supper you ate earlier. It is a rich, heavy smell that tells you that you are among friends. There is a sense of safety in numbers in this air. You know that as long as the air stays steamy and warm, the frost cannot get to you. You feel a deep sense of relaxation. Your skin feels soft, and your eyes feel heavy. You notice how the steam settles on the rough logs of the walls. It makes the wood look dark and shiny. The chinking, that green moss you saw earlier, is damp now, which makes it swell up and fill the cracks even tighter. This is a clever way the shanty works. The wetter the air gets, the tighter the walls become. It is a building that helps itself stay warm. You feel a sense of wonder at how well this simple log box is built. It is not fancy, but it is perfect for the job it has to do. The steam also helps to quiet the room, just like a thick fog in the woods can hide the sound of a falling tree. The steamy air in the shanty makes the sounds of the men feel muffled and far away. A cough or a sneeze doesn't sound loud. It sounds soft, like it is wrapped in cotton. This helps everyone fall into a deeper sleep. You feel the quietness of the room pressing down on you. It is a heavy, comfortable quiet. You are no longer listening for the wind or the cracking of the trees. You are only listening to the soft, wet breath of the shanty. You watch a small cloud of steam drift across the ceiling. It moves slowly, caught in the gentle breeze made by the heat of the stove. It looks like a tiny white ship sailing across a dark wooden ocean. You follow it with your eyes until it disappears into the shadows above the bunks. The movement is very calming. It makes you feel like you are floating too. Your body feels light, despite the heavy blankets. You are drifting away on a sea of warm mist. The night shift is now at its quietest point. The work of the day is a memory, and the work of the morning is a long way off. Right now, there is only the steam and the heat. You feel a wave of sleepiness wash over you, stronger than any you have felt before. The moist air is like a gentle hand closing your eyelids. You don't want to fight it. You want to let the steam carry you off into your dreams. You are warm, you are safe, and the air is holding you close. You take one last deep breath of the thick, pine-scented mist. You feel it travel all the way down to your chest, warming you from the inside out. You are ready to close your eyes for good tonight. The shanty steam has done its work. It has softened the world and made it ready for sleep. You let your head sink back into your pillow of socks, feeling the warmth of the spread and the moisture of the air. The deadly winter is gone. There is only the steam, the shadows, and the deep, dark rest of the Northwoods. The shanty is growing very dark now. The last of the slush lamps has been blown out, and the only light left comes from the great barrel stove in the center of the floor. You lie in your bunk and look out through the muzzle of your bed. From here, you can see the stove clearly. It is no longer a dark piece of iron. It has become a source of deep, red life. The fire has burned down from bright yellow flames into a pile of thick, glowing logs. These logs are what the men call live coals. They do not flicker or jump. They just glow with a steady, heavy heat that looks like melted gold. You watch the way the red light spills out from the small air holes in the stove door. It casts long, thin lines of crimson light across the dirt floor. These lines look like paths leading toward the heat. Every now and then, a log inside the stove will break apart. When it does, a small puff of bright orange sparks flies up, hitting the inside of the iron with a soft clink sound. Then the red glow returns, even deeper than before. It is a very beautiful sight. It reminds you of the sunsets you see over the frozen lakes, where the sky turns the color of a ripe apple just before the stars come out. Here is a simple historical fact about the wood used in these stoves. The men do not use the pine or spruce they cut for work. Those woods burn too fast and make too many sparks. Instead, the wood cook or the fire tender looks for hardwood like sugar maple or yellow birch. These trees grow slower and the wood is much denser. Because the wood is heavy, it holds the heat for a long time. A single large log of maple can glow red and stay hot for 3 or 4 hours. This is how the night shift of the fire stays alive while the men are dreaming. It is a slow, steady burn that guards the camp against the frost. You look at a specific micro-history detail. The poker, leaning against the side of the stove, is a long, heavy rod made of iron. It has a small hook at one end. This is the tool the fire tender uses to move the red-hot logs around. You can see the end of the poker is grey and dusty from being in the fire so many times. It is a simple tool, but it is the only way to talk to the fire. By moving a log just an inch or two, the tender can make the fire breathe better, keeping the red glow alive all through the dark hours. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still and just watch the light. The red glow is very soft. It doesn't show the dirt or the rough edges of the room. It only shows the warmth. The silence is very deep now. You can hear the stove breathing, a low, rhythmic sound as the heat moves through the metal. It is the most peaceful sound in the world. You feel like the fire is a friend who is staying awake just to make sure you are okay. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for the red logs and the iron that holds them. The red light makes the shadows of the drying socks look different. They no longer look like clothes. They look like soft, dark clouds hanging from the ceiling. They move very slowly in the warm air. You follow one shadow with your eyes as it drifts back and forth. It is very hypnotic. The steady, unblinking light of the coals is much more relaxing than the flickering of a candle. It pulls at your eyes, making them feel heavy and warm. You feel the heat on your face, even from all the way across the room. It is a gentle, dry heat that makes your skin feel tight and cozy. You think about the trees that are now inside the stove. Once, they were standing tall in the forest, covered in snow and ice. Now they have turned into heat and light to keep you alive. There is a sense of balance in that. The forest gives you work, it gives you a home, and it gives you the fire to survive. You feel a deep respect for the wood. You watch a log turn from dark red to a bright, shimmering silver as the ash forms on its surface. Underneath that silver ash, the heart of the log is still a burning, angry red. It is full of energy, and it is giving all that energy to you. The night shift of the fire is a quiet one. The fire tender moves silently through the shadows. You see him lean over, his face lit up in bright orange, as he opens the stove door to check the wood. He doesn't make a sound. He adds one more heavy log of maple, and the red glow dims for just a second before the heat takes hold of the new wood. Then, the glow returns. Stronger than ever, the door clicks shut, and the room returns to its soft red twilight. You feel safe knowing that someone is watching the heart of the camp. You feel your mind starting to slow down, matching the steady glow of the coals. You are no longer thinking about the big pines or the heavy axes. You are only thinking about the red light. It feels like the light is inside you now, warming your bones and making your heart beat slow and steady. You are sinking deeper into your nest of hay. The world outside the bunk is just a blur of red and shadow. You are in the warmth envelope, and you are perfectly content. You take a long, slow breath. The air is warm and smells of the maple smoke. It is a clean, honest smell. You feel a wave of peace wash over you. The deadly winter has no power here. The red logs are a wall of fire that the frost cannot cross. You are tucked away, guarded by the iron stove and the glowing wood. You are ready to let the red light lead you into the deepest part of the night. You close your eyes, but you can still see the red glow behind your eyelids. It is a soft, comforting color. It is the color of home. You let your body go limp, feeling the hay support you. You are drifting now, moving away from the shanty and into the world of dreams. The fire is burning, the logs are red, and the night shift is safe in the glow. The shanty is now a place of deep, rhythmic sound. Even though the men are no longer talking and the lamps are out, the room is far from silent. You lie in the dark and listen to the sounds of 60 men sleeping. This is the night shift of the human body. When you work as hard as a lumberjack, your sleep is not light or quiet. It is a heavy, powerful rest. You hear the sound of dozens of different breaths all mixing together. Some are long and slow, sounding like the wind in the pines. Others are short and heavy, like the sound of a cross-cut saw moving through a log. The most common sound in the shanty at night is the snoring. With so many tired men sleeping on their backs in narrow bunks, the air is full of it. It is not an annoying sound here, it is a comforting one. It tells you that your friends are safe and resting well. Some snores are deep and rumble like distant thunder. Others have a whistling sound, like a tea kettle on the stove. These sounds bounce off the log walls and the low ceiling, creating a steady hum that fills the room. It becomes a kind of white noise that helps you fall even deeper into your own sleep. Here is a simple historical fact about the sleeping habits in these camps. Because the men are packed so tightly together in the muzzle-loader bunks, they often have to sleep spoon style. This means everyone in one long row is lying on the same side to save space. When one man gets tired of lying on his right side, he will call out "log over" in a loud whisper. Then every man in the row will turn over to their left side at the exact same time. It is a silent, midnight dance that keeps the peace in the bunk. You feel the man next to you shift his weight, and you adjust your own body to match, keeping the shared warmth tight under the blankets. You notice a specific micro-history detail: the night watchman's boots. Every now and then, you hear a soft thump creak on the dirt floor. This is the man whose job it is to stay awake and watch the fire. He wears soft boots made of felt or thick wool, so he does not wake the crew. You hear him move toward the barrel stove. You hear the soft clink of the iron handle as he lifts the door. Then there is the sound of a heavy log being slid into the coals, a muffled thud, and the rustle of bark. The door clicks shut again. These small, careful sounds tell you that you are being looked after. Now we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop focusing on the snores and the watchman. You listen to the sounds of the building itself. In the quiet, you hear the log walls groan. As the temperature outside drops even lower, the wood of the shanty shrinks just a little bit. It makes a slow creaking sound like a big ship on the water. You also hear the soft pitter-patter of a bit of dried mud falling from a crack between the logs. These are the sounds of a house that is working hard to stay standing against the storm. It feels like the shanty is alive, just like the men inside it. The air carries the sound of the wind, but it is muffled by the heavy logs and the thick snow on the roof. It sounds like a low, constant vibration. Sometimes, a particularly strong gust will hit the cabin, and you hear the shakes on the roof rattle for a second. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Then it goes back to the steady hum. You feel a deep sense of peace. You are in a small pocket of warmth and sound, surrounded by a vast, silent wilderness. The night sounds of the crew make the wilderness feel less lonely. You are part of a pack, a community of workers who have found a way to be comfortable in the middle of nowhere. You hear a man mumble in his sleep. He might be dreaming of his home, or perhaps he is still calling out timber in his mind. You hear the soft rustle of hay as someone else pulls their blanket higher. These are the small, private sounds of life. They remind you that every person in this room has their own story and their own dreams. But tonight, you are all the same. You are all tired, you are all warm, and you are all listening to the same song of the shanty. The rhythm of the breathing is very hypnotic. You find yourself timing your own breath to match the man sleeping next to you. In and out. In and out. It makes you feel like you are sinking into the hay. Your body feels heavier and heavier. The sounds of the room start to blur together. The snoring, the creaking of the logs, and the whistling of the wind all become one single low note. It is the sound of the night shift at rest. It is a powerful, honest sound that tells the truth about life in the woods. It is hard, but it is good. You think about the horses in the hovel next door. You can hear a faint, rhythmic thump as one of them kicks the wooden wall in its sleep. They are resting their big muscles too. The whole camp, from the smallest kooky to the biggest ox, is joined together in this chorus of sleep. It is a symphony of survival. You feel a wave of sleepiness that is so strong it feels like a physical weight. Your mind is ready to stop listening and start dreaming. The red glow from the stove is still there, but your eyes are closed now. You are just a listener. You hear the fire tender move back to his seat by the door. You hear the soft hiss of a log that has just caught fire. These are the last things you hear before you drift away. You are safe in the middle of 60 brothers. You are tucked into the hay, wrapped in wool, and surrounded by the steady, comforting sounds of the crew. You take one more slow, deep breath. The sound of the shanty is a lullaby that has been sung for 100 years. It is a song of warmth, wood, and work. You let the sounds wash over you, pulling you down into a deep and dreamless sleep. The deadly winter can howl all it wants. The night sounds of the crew are louder, and they are singing you to rest. As you lie in your bunk, your face is only a few inches away from the wall of the shanty. In the dim red light from the stove, you can see the details of the logs very clearly. You notice the thick, green material stuffed into the cracks between the big pieces of wood. This is the moss. Earlier, you saw it from the door, but now you can see how important it really is. This moss is the secret to why you are warm tonight. Without these tiny, soft plants from the forest floor, the shanty would be as cold as an icebox. The wind would blow right through the gaps, and the snow would pile up on your blankets. This is sphagnum moss, a microhistory detail that every woodsman respects. During the autumn, before the first frost, the men go to the swampy parts of the woods to gather it. This moss is like a sponge. When it is in the forest, it holds a lot of water, but once it is pulled up and dried, it becomes light and springy. It is full of tiny air pockets. These air pockets are what stop the cold. In the shanty, the men pack it so tightly into the cracks that it becomes like a solid wall of wool. It is the forest's own way of keeping the heat where it belongs. You reach out a finger from under your blanket and touch a bit of the moss. It feels soft but very firm. It has been pushed in with a chinking iron, which is a flat, blunt tool made of metal. You can see the marks where the tool pressed the moss deep into the wood. Because the air inside is steamy and warm, the moss has soaked up a little bit of moisture. This makes it swell up, filling the gap even more perfectly. It is a smart way to build. The more you live in the cabin and breathe in it, the tighter the walls become. Here is a simple historical fact about the walls of a shanty. The logs are not just stacked, they are barked. This means the men use a long tool called a draw knife to peel the bark off the logs before they build. They do this because bugs and rots like to hide under the bark. By peeling the logs, the wood stays strong for many years. You can see the long smooth marks left by the draw knife on the log right in front of your nose. The wood is a pale, creamy colour under the dust. It feels smooth and cool, a big contrast to the soft, warm moss. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving and just look at the tiny world of the wall. You watch a single strand of moss that is sticking out a bit further than the rest. It is perfectly still. There is no draft here. Even though a blizzard is screaming on the other side of this wood, not a single puff of cold air is getting through. In this silence, you feel a deep sense of respect for the men who built this. They didn't have bricks or cement. They only had what the earth gave them, mud and moss. And yet, they made a place that is safer than a castle. You think about how the moss is a night shift worker too. While you sleep, the moss is holding back the frost. It is a living barrier. If you listen very closely, putting your ear right against the log, you can hear the winter. It sounds like a distant, angry ghost. It is a faint whoosh and a tap-tap-tap of ice hitting the wood, but the sound is muffled and weak. The moss and the logs have turned the deadly winter into nothing more than a quiet story. You feel a wave of comfort go through your body. You're only inches away from danger, but you have never felt safer. The smell of the moss is earthy and old. It smells like the deep parts of the woods where the sun rarely reaches. It is a clean, natural scent that mixes well with the pine and the smoke. It reminds you that you are part of nature. You are not fighting the forest. You are living with it. You're using the things the forest provides to stay alive. This thought makes you feel peaceful. You aren't an outsider here. With the moss so close to your face, you feel like you are tucked into the very earth itself. You notice how the frost has formed on the heads of the iron nails in the wall. The nails go all the way through the wood, and because metal carries cold very quickly, the heads of the nails inside the room are covered in white ice. They look like tiny stars stuck in the logs, but the moss around them is dry and warm. It acts like a guard, keeping the ice from spreading to the rest of the wall. You see the chinking as a map of the work done by the crew. Some cracks are wide, and some are narrow, but everyone is filled with care. The night shift of the forest is cold and dark, but the shanty is a bright, warm bubble in the middle of it. You look at the dark line of the moss as it travels along the length of your bunk. It looks like a long, soft snake sleeping between the logs. It is a humble thing, just a bit of dried grass and mud, but it's more valuable than gold right now. You feel a sense of gratitude for the swamps where the moss grows. You feel gratitude for the autumn days spent gathering it. Your eyes are starting to get very heavy again. Looking at the patterns in the wood and the texture of the moss is very relaxing. It is like looking at the clouds in the summer sky. Your mind starts to drift. You think about the moss growing back into spring, under the melting snow. You think about the cycle of the woods. Everything has a purpose. The tree gives the wood, the swamp gives the moss, and the man gives the fire. Together, they make a home. You pull your hand back under the blankets, feeling the sudden warmth of the wall. You tuck the spread under your chin, making sure no heat escapes. You take one last look at the white nail heads and the green moss. You feel a deep, heavy sleepiness pulling at you. The walls are solid. The cracks are sealed. The deadly winter is locked outside. You are ready to let the silence of the logs lead you into your dreams. You are warm, you are tucked in, and the shanty is holding you tight. As you lie in the quiet dark of the shanty, your mind begins to drift away from the log walls and the moss. You start to think about the giants that live just outside the door. These are the great white pines. In the 1880s, these trees are the kings of the North Woods. Even though you are tucked under your blankets, you can almost feel their presence. You spent the whole day among them, and their image is burned into your mind. You think about how they look when the sun first hits their tops in the morning, tall, proud, and covered in a dusting of silver frost. The white pine is a wonder of nature. Here is a simple historical fact. Some of these trees have been growing since before your great-great-grandfather was born. They can live for 200 years or more, reaching heights of over 150 feet. That is taller than many buildings in the big cities. When you stand at the bottom of one and look up, the top seems to touch the very clouds. These are the trees the world wants. They are used to build the masts of great ships and the floors of houses far away. You feel a sense of honor being the one who works with such grand things. You remember the feeling of your axe hitting the trunk of a pine. The wood of a white pine is soft compared to the oak or the maple, but it is still strong. When the blade bites in, it makes a clean, wet sound. Thwack! You remember the smell that comes out of the cut. It is a burst of fresh, cold scent like a mixture of citrus and earth. It is the smell of the tree's life. Even now, in the warm air of the bunkhouse, you can almost taste that sharp pine flavor on your tongue. It is a clean smell that stays with you long after the sun goes down. You think about a specific microhistory detail, the undercut. This is the V-shaped notch you and your partner chop into the side of the tree. You have to be very clever when you make the undercut. It decides exactly where the tree will fall. If you do it right, the giant pine will land softly on a bed of smaller branches you have laid out. If you do it wrong, the tree might split or fall the wrong way, which is very dangerous. You remember the sound of the saw on the other side of the tree. The swish, swish, swish of the long steel blade. You remember the moment the tree began to groan, a deep sound coming from the very heart of the wood. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still and imagine the forest at night. In your mind, you see the pines standing in the moonlight. They don't move. They are like a silent army of giants draped in white snow. The forest is so quiet that you can hear a single needle fall. There is no wind in this memory, only the deep, blue peace of the winter woods. You feel a sense of calm wash over you. The trees are not your enemies. You work with them, and they provide for you. In this silence, you feel the great weight of the forest's history. It is a very old and very quiet world out there. You think about the widow makers. This is a name the men give to the dead branches that hang high up in the tops of the pines. When the wind blows hard, or when a tree begins to fall, these heavy branches can drop without warning. You have to keep your ears open at all times. You listen for the snap of wood above your head. It makes you respect the trees even more. They are beautiful, but they are also powerful. Working among the great pines makes you feel small, but it also makes you feel strong. You are part of the night shift that tames the wilderness, one giant at a time. You remember the skidding. Once the tree is down and the branches are trimmed, the big horses are brought in. These horses are almost as grand as the trees. They are huge, with muscles that ripple under their thick winter coats. You see them in your mind, their breath coming out in giant clouds of steam as they pull the heavy logs over the ice. The logs slide along the skid road, making a low, rumbling sound like distant thunder. This is the music of the woods, the sound of the forest moving toward the river. The white pine has a very special kind of bark. It is dark and rough, with deep cracks that look like a map. You remember how the bark felt against your woolen mittens today. It was cold and covered in bits of frozen sap. That sap is the blood of the pine. It is sticky and golden. You still have a few spots of it on your hands. You rub your thumb against your palm, feeling the tackiness of the dried resin. It is a reminder that you were out there, in the heart of the giants. It makes you feel connected to the land. you think about the top of the tree. After the main log is cut, the top part with all the green needles is left behind. These needles stay green all winter long. They have a beautiful dark color that looks almost black against the white snow. You remember the sound the wind makes when it travels through those needles. It is a soft, rushing sound like a long sigh. It is the voice of the pine. Even here in the bunkhouse, you can hear a bit of that sighing in the wind that hits the roof. It is a peaceful, lonely sound that helps you feel even more tucked away in your warm hay bed. Your mind moves to the spring. You think about what will happen to the logs you cut today. When the ice melts and the rivers begin to roar, those logs will be rolled into the water. They will float for miles and miles, bobbing like giant corks until they reach the big sawmills. The wood you touch today will become someone's home or a part of a great ship sailing across the ocean. There is a sense of pride in knowing your work travels so far. You are helping to build the world, one white pine at a time. The thought of the spring makes you feel a bit sleepy. The cold winter night is long, but the promise of the moving water is always there. You feel the warmth of the shanty soaking into your skin. The red light of the stove is still glowing, and the snores of the men are a steady rhythm. You are no longer thinking about the heavy axes or the dangerous branches. You are just thinking about the beauty of the trees. They are standing out there in the dark, guarding the forest while you sleep. You take a long, slow breath, smelling the faint scent of pine that still clings to your woolen shirt. It is the best smell in the world. It is the smell of the North Woods. You feel your body sinking deeper into the hay. Your mind is quiet now. The giants are at rest, and so are you. You are ready to let the image of the tall pines fade into the dark. You are warm, you are safe, and the great forest is watching over your dreams. In the deep part of the night, while most of the shanty is lost in heavy sleep, a new sound begins to drift through the log walls. It is a very soft, rhythmic noise coming from the other side of the dingle walkway. This is the sound of the cook and his helper, the Kooky, starting their own night shift. While the lumberjacks are still dreaming of home and high pines, the kitchen is waking up. You hear the muffled clink of a metal pot and the soft scrape of a wooden spoon against a bowl. These sounds are not loud enough to wake the crew, but they are a sign that the cycle of the camp is starting once again. The cook is one of the most important men in the camp. Here is a simple historical fact. A logging camp is only as good as its cook. If the food is bad, or if there is not enough of it, the men will leave and find another job. The cook is the first person to get up, usually around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. He works in the dark by the light of a single lamp, moving quietly so he does not disturb the tired men next door. He has to prepare enough food to fill 60 hungry stomachs, and he has to do it all on a wood-burning stove. You listen to the sound of the sourdough. This is a micro-history detail that is the pride of every camp cook. Sourdough is a mixture of flour and water that has been allowed to ferment or grow a little bit sour over many weeks. The cook keeps a starter in a big wooden crock. Every morning, he takes some out to make the bread and pancakes, and then he adds more flour to keep it alive. You hear the soft splat as he drops the thick dough onto a floured table. Then comes the rhythmic thump-thump as he kneads the bread, pushing the air out of it with his strong hands. This sourdough is what gives the shanty bread its special, tangy taste. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You lie perfectly still and just listen to the distant work. There is no talking in the kitchen yet. The cook and the cookee know their jobs so well, they do not need to speak. You hear the soft hiss of the kitchen fire being stoked and the gentle slosh of water being poured into a giant coffee pot. In this silence, you feel the comfort of being looked after. Someone is awake, making sure that when you open your eyes, the world will be ready for you. It makes the darkness of the bunk feel even warmer and more secure. The smell starts to change now. The heavy scent of pine and old tobacco is joined by the first hints of breakfast. It is a very faint smell of roasting coffee beans. Because the camp is so far from the shops, the cook often has to roast and grind the coffee himself. It is a rich, toasted smell that cuts through the steamy air of the bunkhouse. You also smell the salt pork being sliced. The cook uses a very sharp knife, and you can almost hear the snip-snip as he trims the fat. This pork will be fried until it is crispy, providing the salt and energy you need for the first few hours of cutting. You think about the cookee and his morning chores. Before the sun is even a thought in the sky, he has to go out into the cold to get more water. He has to walk to the stream, break the new ice that formed overnight, and carry heavy buckets back to the kitchen. You hear the heavy door of the cookhouse open and shut, a distant thud, followed by a faint whistle of the wind. You feel a shiver of sympathy for the boy, but you are also glad to be under your blankets. His work makes your rest possible. He is the quiet engine that keeps the camp running. The kitchen stove is much bigger than the barrel stove in the bunkhouse. It is a massive piece of iron with many different eyes or holes on top for the pots. You hear the clatter of the iron lids being moved. Each lid has its own specific sound. The cook is moving the big pots of beans and the giant pans of hash. Hash is a mixture of chopped meat and potatoes that has been cooking slowly all night. It smells earthy and filling. The thought of that hot food waiting for you makes your stomach give a small, quiet growl. But the warmth of the hay is still more inviting than the thought of getting up. You notice the rhythm of the work. It is slow and steady, never hurried. The cook has a routine that he follows every single day of the winter. He knows exactly how many logs the fire needs, and exactly how much salt to put in the beans. This steady rhythm is very calming to hear. It tells you that everything is okay. The world is still turning. The camp is still safe, and the morning will come just as it always does. You feel a sense of order in the middle of the wild woods. The night shift of the kitchen is a peaceful one. There is no pressure yet, just the slow preparation. You hear the soft clink of tin plates being stacked on the long tables. One for every man. 60 plates, 60 mugs, 60 spoons. It is a lot of metal, and the sound of it being moved is like a quiet chime. You imagine the long tables in the dark cookroom, waiting for the men to fill them. It is a scene of quiet readiness. The camp is like a giant clock, and the cook is the one who winds the spring. You feel your mind starting to drift back towards sleep. The sounds from the kitchen are like a background song. They are familiar and good. You know that in an hour or two, the Gabriel horn will blow, and you will have to leave your warm nest. But for now, the sounds are just a reminder that you are part of a well-oiled machine. You are a lumberjack, and you are being cared for. You take a deep, slow breath, smelling the faint hint of coffee and wood smoke. The red glow of the stove in your room has faded a bit more, but the warmth is still there. You tuck your hands under your chin and listen to one last thump of the dough on the kitchen table. It is a solid, honest sound. It is the sound of life continuing in the frozen north. You are ready to let the soft noises of the kitchen fade away. You are ready for one last hour of deep, dreamless rest before the world wakes up for real. The night shift is almost over, but the most peaceful part is right now. You are warm, the food is cooking, and the shanty is holding the morning at bay. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of the cook's work lead you back into the shadows of the hay. You lie very still, feeling the heavy stillness of the shanty. Through the logs, you can hear the winter, but it feels like it is 1,000 miles away, out there. The frost is deadly. That is not just a word the men use. It is the truth of the North Woods. If a man were to sit down in the snow tonight without a fire, he would fall into a sleep he would never wake from. The cold is a silent hunter. It creeps into your fingers and toes, turning your blood to slush. But here, inside the shanty, you have won. You have built a fortress that the cold cannot enter. You feel a deep sense of safety that is almost like a physical weight. It is the feeling of being in the dry. In the woods, that is the best thing a man can be. You think about the deadly frost and how it works. It finds every little gap. It tries to come in through the keyhole of the door or the tiny spaces around the window frame. You can see the evidence of its struggle. The nail heads on the inside of the walls are covered in white fuzzy ice called hoarfrost. It looks like tiny frozen feathers. The frost has made it that far, but it can go no further. The heat from the barrel stove and the warm breath of 60 men push it back. Here is a simple historical fact about the cold. In the middle of a deep freeze, the temperature can drop to 40 degrees below zero. At that temperature, metal becomes brittle and can snap like a dry twig. If you were to touch a piece of iron with your bare hand, your skin would stick to it instantly. This is why the shanty is built with wood and moss. Wood does not steal your heat the way metal or stone does. It holds the warmth. You run your hand along the smooth pole of your bunk. The wood feels neutral and kind. It is a material that wants you to survive. You look at a specific microhistory detail, the felt boot. Near the Deacon Seat, you see a pair of these heavy grey boots. They are made of wool that has been pressed and pounded until it is an inch thick. They are not waterproof, but they are incredibly warm. When a man wears these, the deadly frost cannot reach his feet. They are like 2 warm rooms for your toes to live in. Seeing them there, sitting quietly in the dim light, reminds you of the clever ways men have found to beat the winter. Everything in this room, the boots, the moss, the blankets, is a piece of a puzzle that fits together to keep the night shift alive. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop thinking about the tools and the frost. You just feel the safety. You are tucked so deep into the hay that you can only see a small patch of the roof. It is perfectly dark and perfectly warm. In this silence, you feel like you're in the safest place on earth. The roar of the wind outside is just a background noise, like the sound of a river you don't have to cross. You are protected. You are hidden. The deadly winter is a monster, but the shanty is your shield. You think about the night shift of the forest animals. Out there, the deer are huddling together under the low branches of the cedar trees to stay out of the wind. The bears are deep in their dens, their hearts beating slow and steady. You are doing the same thing. You have used your clever mind to build a den that is even better than theirs. You feel a sense of pride. You are not just a victim of the weather. You are a master of it. You have turned the most dangerous time of the year into a time of deep, peaceful rest. The smell of the shanty is the smell of safety. It is the scent of things that are dry. Dry wood, dry hay, dry wood. In the winter, dampness is the friend of the frost. But here, everything is toasted by the fire. You breathe in the dusty, sweet air. It feels good in your throat. It doesn't have the sharp, icy bite of the outside air. It is soft and mellow. You feel your lungs expanding fully, taking in the warmth. Your body knows it is safe, and it is finally letting go of the tension it has held all day. You notice the chinking again. The frozen mud and moss are like a silent army standing guard. Every inch of that wall was touched by a man's hand to make sure it was tight. You feel a connection to the men who built this cabin. They knew the deadly frost was coming, and they prepared for it. You are sleeping in the result of their hard work. It is a beautiful thing to be cared for by the work of others. You feel a wave of gratitude for the crew. You are all looking after each other, even while you sleep. The red light from the stove is very low now, but the heat is still radiating through the room. It is a slow, steady pulse. It feels like the shanty has a fever, but a good one. It is a heat that fights the cold. You watch the frost on a nail head melt slightly and then freeze again. It is a tiny battle happening right before your eyes, and the heat is winning. The drop of water stays a drop. It doesn't turn into a spear of ice. You feel a sense of victory. You have made it through the worst part of the night. Your mind is very quiet. The fear of the cold, which is always there in the back of a woodsman's mind during the day, has vanished. You are no longer watching the sky for snow or checking the wind for a change in direction. You are just a man in a bed. The deadly winter is just a story told by the wind. It cannot get past the logs. It cannot get through the moss. And it certainly cannot get under your heavy wool blankets. You take a long, slow breath and let it out with a sigh. You are so comfortable it almost hurts. You feel like you could stay in this hay nest forever. The world outside is a white wilderness of ice and danger, but in here there is only the soft dark and the shared warmth. You are safe. You are warm. The watch is being kept. You close your eyes and let the feeling of safety carry you down into the last, deepest part of your sleep. The wind that was screaming against the logs just an hour ago has suddenly died down. The storm has passed, leaving behind a world that is perfectly still. This is the deep quiet of the North Woods. It is a silence so heavy it feels like a physical thing pressing against the outside of the shanty. When the wind stops in the middle of a winter night, the forest becomes a different place. It is no longer an enemy. It is a sleeping giant. You lie in your bunk, your ears straining to hear something, but there is nothing. No rustle of needles, no creak of branches, no hiss of snow. In this deep quiet, the sounds inside the shanty become even clearer. You can hear the tiny metallic ping of the stove iron cooling down. You can hear the soft, rhythmic rustle of the hay as a man 3 bunks down moves his arm. It is a moment of pure reflection. In the city, there is always noise, the sound of wheels on stone, the calling of voices, the clatter of life. But here, miles away from the nearest town, you're experiencing a silence that has existed for thousands of years. It is a holy kind of quiet. It makes you feel like you are the only person left in the world, tucked away in your wooden box. Here is a simple historical fact about the winter forest. Snow is one of the best sound quenchers in the world because the snow is made of tiny flakes with air trapped between them. It acts like a giant sponge for noise. Tonight, with 3 feet of fresh powder on the ground and a thick white cap on the roof, the shanty is wrapped in a blanket of silence. The snow swallows every sound from the outside world. It is as if the forest has been lined with wool. This is why the winter feels so much more peaceful than the autumn or the spring. The world is muffled, and your mind can finally rest. You think about a specific micro-history detail, the snowshoe. Leaning against the wall near the door, you know there is a pair of these wooden frames strung with animal hide. They are shaped like long tears or giant tennis bats. Without them, you would be a prisoner in the shanty after a storm like tonight's. They are made of strong ashwood and babachi, which is a word for strips of deerskin. In this deep quiet, you imagine yourself walking on them tomorrow morning. You would glide over the top of the deep drifts, making no sound at all. The snowshoes are a silent way to move through a silent world. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You do not think about work or tools. You just let the quiet fill your head. It is a cool, dark feeling. You feel like you are sinking into a deep pool of still water. The quietness is very healing. It washes away the loud crash of the falling trees and the shouting of the teamsters. You feel your heartbeat slowing down until it is just a tiny, soft thud in the darkness. In this moment, you are perfectly at peace. The forest is quiet, the shanty is quiet, and your soul is quiet. The smell of the room has settled into a mellow, sweet scent. The shanty steam has mostly vanished, leaving behind the smell of cold iron and dry wood. It is a clean smell. It reminds you of the high mountains and the clear sky. You breathe it in slowly, enjoying the way the air feels in your nose. It is a simple pleasure, but in the deep quiet of the night, simple things become very important. You feel a sense of clarity. Your thoughts are not jumbled or worried. They are as still and clear as a frozen pond. You notice a small crack of light under the door. It is not the yellow light of a lamp, but a pale blue-silver light. The clouds must have cleared, and the moon is out. This moonglow on the snow is very bright. It finds its way into the room, showing the shapes of the boots and the curve of the Deacon Seat. The light is cold and beautiful. It doesn't bring any heat, but it brings a sense of wonder. You imagine the forest outside, lit up in silver and blue, looking like a world made of glass. It is a beautiful sight that only the night shift gets to see. The deep quiet makes you feel very small, but not in a bad way. It makes you feel like a tiny part of a very big, very old story. The forest has been here long before you, and it will be here long after you are gone. The quiet is its way of telling you that everything is okay. The trees are resting, the earth is resting, and you should rest too. You feel the weight of the hay beneath you, supporting your body. You feel the weight of the blankets above you, holding you down. You're pinned between the earth and the wool, safe and still. You hear the fire tender move one last time. He doesn't add any more wood. He just looks into the stove, his face a pale shadow in the moonlight. He sees that the coals are enough to last until the morning call. He walks back to his bunk and climbs in. Now the human part of the camp is as quiet as the forest. There is no more clink of iron or thud of wood. There is only the breathing. It is a soft collective sound, like the tide moving on a beach. You feel a wave of deep sleepiness. The quiet is pulling you under. It is a gentle pull, like a slow river carrying a leaf. You don't want to resist it. You want to go where the quiet is taking you. You are ready to leave the world of light and sound. You are ready to become part of the silence. Your mind is turning off, one thought at a time, like lamps being blown out in a long hallway. You take one last long breath. The air is perfectly still. You feel a sense of completion. The day is done, the storm is over, and the rest is here. You are a shanty boy in the heart of the winter, and the deep quiet is your lullaby. You let your head sink an inch deeper into the hay. The silver light, the dark logs, and the heavy silence all blur together. You are warm, you are safe, and the north woods are dreaming with you. As the deep quiet of the winter night holds you in its grip, your mind begins to wander away from the ice and the frost. You are tucked so warmly into your hay nest that your body starts to forget about the cold outside. You begin to dream of the green spring. In the logging camp, the spring is not just a season, it is the goal of all your hard work. You close your eyes and imagine the day when the sun stays up longer than the moon. You think about the ice break, that wonderful moment when the frozen rivers finally crack and groan, turning back into rushing water. In your dream, the white world of the Northwoods begins to change. The blinding snow starts to melt, turning into millions of tiny diamonds that soak into the dark earth. You can almost smell it, the scent of wet mud and waking moss. It is a heavy, sweet smell that is very different from the dry scent of the winter. You imagine the first mayflowers poking their heads through the dead leaves. They are small and pink, looking very delicate, but they are strong enough to push through the last bits of frost. This thought makes you smile in your sleep. The green is coming back. Here is a simple historical fact about the end of the winter. The spring drive is the busiest and most dangerous time for a lumberjack. Once the ice on the river melts, all the thousands of logs you cut during the winter are rolled into the water. The men have to jump onto the moving logs with their spiked boots to keep them from jamming together. This is the night shift of the water. It is a time of fast movement and loud noise, a big change from the quiet, slow life of the shanty. But even though it is hard, every man looks forward to it because it means the winter has been beaten. You think about a specific microhistory detail, the river driver's pole. In your dream, you are standing on a giant white pine log in the middle of a cold river. You are holding a long pole made of straight spruce with a sharp metal point at the end. You use this pole to push against the riverbank or other logs, balancing yourself like a bird on a wire. You can feel the spray of the cold water on your face. It is not the freezing ice of a blizzard, but the fresh, life-giving water of the spring. The pole feels solid in your hands, a tool that connects you to the power of the moving river. Now, we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop moving in your dream and just listen to the sound of the melting woods. You hear the constant drip, drip, drip of the snow falling from the branches. It is a very rhythmic, peaceful sound. You hear the first bird of the year, a robin, or a chickadee singing a few clear notes from the top of a birch tree. In this silence, you feel the weight of the winter lifting off your shoulders. The world is opening up again. You feel a sense of hope that is as warm as the sun on your back. You dream of the Wanigan boat. This is the floating kitchen that follows the men down the river during the spring drive. You can see the smoke rising from its small chimney as it bobs along the water. You imagine sitting on the bank of the river in the evening, eating a hot meal while the sun sets behind green hills instead of white ones. The air is soft and smells of pine needles and damp earth. You don't need 3 layers of wool socks anymore. You can feel the breeze on your skin, and it feels like a soft caress instead of a sharp bite. The colors in your dream are so bright. You see the new green of the larch trees. These are special trees that lose their needles in the winter but grow soft, bright green ones in the spring. They look like emeralds against the dark bark of the forest. You see the blue of the sky reflected in the puddles on the skid road. It is a deep, rich blue that you haven't seen for months. Everything feels fresh and new, as if the world has just been washed clean. You feel a deep sense of joy in your chest. The long darkness of the night shift is almost over. You think about the horses too. In the spring, they get to go back to the farms to rest and eat green grass. You imagine the big workhorses running in a field, their heavy hooves kicking up the soft dirt. They look happy and light without the heavy sleds and the biting wind. You feel a connection to them. You are both workers of the woods, and you both deserve the warmth of the spring sun. The thought of the horses resting makes you feel even more relaxed in your own bed. The shanty bread in your dream tastes different. It is fresh and light, eaten outside in the open air. You imagine sitting with your friends on a log that isn't covered in ice. You are laughing and talking, and the sound of your voices carries far through the budding trees. There is no need for muzzle-loader bunks or shared blankets when the spring comes. You feel a sense of freedom that makes you want to stretch your arms out wide. You are no longer huddling, you are expanding. But even as you dream of the green, you feel the warmth of the shanty around you. It is the bridge between the winter and the spring. The hay beneath you is a reminder of the summer that has passed, and the blankets are the protection you need until the sun returns. You realize that you can only enjoy the dream of the spring because you are so safe and warm right now. The shanty is the place where you wait for the world to wake up. You take a long, slow breath. The dream of the green spring is fading back into the soft dark of the bunkhouse. You are not disappointed. You are content. You know the spring is coming, but for now, the winter rest is exactly what you need. You are sinking back into the deep, heavy sleep of the Northwoods. The deadly winter is still outside, but in your heart, the first flowers are already starting to grow. You are warm, you are safe, and the dream of the spring is a promise that you will see the sun again. You let the green colours fade into the red glow of the stove, feeling perfectly at peace in your nest of hay. The deepest part of the night is here. This is the hour when the frost is the sharpest and the world is at its coldest. But inside the shanty, the night shift of the fire tender is still moving. You are half awake, floating in the soft space between dreams and the real world. You hear a sound that you have come to know well over the long winter months. It is the sound of the heavy iron latch on the barrel stove being lifted. Clink. Then comes the low, heavy groan of the iron door swinging open. You don't open your eyes, but you can feel the sudden change in the light. Even through your closed eyelids, a warm orange glow fills your vision. The fire tender is moving with great care. He doesn't want to wake the 60 sleeping men. He reaches for one last, massive log. This is a special log, saved just for this time of night. It is a butt log of rock maple, thick and heavy with bark that looks like grey stone. It is the densest wood in the forest. He slides it into the stove, and you hear the soft crackle as the hungry red coals begin to bite into the new wood. The tendy uses the iron poker to nudge it into the perfect spot. Then he closes the door. The latch clicks back into place, and the room returns to its quiet red twilight. Here is a simple historical fact about the fire tender. He is often the cowboy or the oldest man in the camp. His job is not to cut the big pines, but to keep the lifeblood of the camp moving. He knows the personality of the stove. He knows exactly how to bank the coals so the heat lasts until the first grey light at morning. He is the guardian of the warmth. While you sleep, he is the one who stands between you and the deadly frost. He is a quiet hero of the woods, and every man in the bunkhouse trusts him with their life. You notice a specific micro-history detail, the firelight on the ceiling. As the new log catches fire, the light coming through the air vents in the stove gets brighter for a few minutes. You can see the reflection of the flames dancing on the underside of the bunks and the heavy roof beams. The light is a deep, rich gold. It moves in a slow, flickering rhythm, like the heartbeat of the shanty. You watch the shadows of the hanging socks stretch and shrink against the logs. It is a very hypnotic sight. It reminds you that, even in the darkest hour, the fire is alive and working for you. Now we take a moment of atmospheric silence. You stop listening to the tender and just feel the new wave of heat. It is a very soft, gentle heat that moves through the room like a warm breeze. You hear the wood singing. This is a tiny, high-pitched whistling sound that happens when the moisture inside the new log turns to steam. Ree-ee. It is a very peaceful sound. In this silence, you feel the strength of the building. The logs are holding the night, the moss is holding the wind, and the stove is holding the fire. You are perfectly tucked into the middle of it all. The smell of the new log is wonderful. It is the scent of toasted sugar and dry earth. Because it is maple, it doesn't have the sharp sting of pine smoke. It is a mellow, sweet smell that fills the bunkhouse. It makes you feel like you are back in a kitchen at home. You breathe it in deeply, letting it fill your lungs. The air is warm and heavy, making your body feel like it is made of lead. You couldn't move even if you wanted to. You are pinned to the hay by the weight of your own relaxation. You think about the wood tender's hands. They are rough and covered in soot, but they are gentle when they move the fire. He treats the coals like they are precious jewels. In a way, they are. They are the only thing that makes life possible in this frozen wilderness. You feel a deep sense of companionship with the man. Even though you are sleeping and he is awake, you are working together. You provide the trees, and he provides the heat. It is the perfect circle of the logging camp. The night shift is coming to its natural end. The final log is in, and the work of the night is almost done. You can feel the temperature in the room rising just a few degrees. It is just enough to make you pull your hands out from under the blankets for a second to feel the air. The air feels like silk against your skin. Then you tuck them back in, snuggling deeper into the hay. The hay makes a soft, welcoming rustle. It is the best bed you have ever had because you have earned it with your own sweat. You notice the muzzle of your bunk again. The moonlight from the window is starting to fade, replaced by a very faint, deep blue in the sky. The morning is still an hour away, but the world is starting to wake up. You hear a distant owl hooting in the forest, a lonely, beautiful sound that carries through the quiet air. It is the last voice of the night. You feel a sense of peace that you have made it through another winter night. You are warm, you have your health, and you have your brothers around you. The red glow from the stove is steady now. The new log has settled in for its long, slow burn. You feel a wave of sleepiness that is so heavy it feels like you are sinking through the floor. Your mind is no longer wandering to the spring or the pines. It is staying right here in the warmth of the blankets. You are ready for the final, deepest rest of the night. The deadly winter has been kept at bay for one more shift. You take a long, slow breath. The smell of the maple wood is the last thing you notice. It is a sweet, honest smell that tells you all is well. You let your muscles go completely limp, feeling the support of the hay and the weight of the wool. You are a shanty boy, you are home, and the fire is burning bright. You close your eyes and let the warmth lead you into the dark. The very last hour of the night is the most peaceful time in the whole forest. The deep blue of the sky is just beginning to turn to a soft, pale grey in the east. Inside the shanty, the world is perfectly still. The heavy snoring of the men has slowed down to a soft, steady hum. The night shift of the fire is now a bed of deep, glowing coals that give off a heat that is as steady as a heartbeat. You lie in your hay nest, feeling the weight of the wool blankets pressing you down into a state of total rest. This is the heavy sleep of the woodsman, a sleep that has been earned through 10 hours of hard work in the biting cold. You feel a sense of completion. You have survived the deadly winter for another night. You have been fed, you have been warmed, and you have been held safe by the thick log walls and the soft green moss. There is a specific microhistory detail you notice as you linger in this half-awake state, the cook's horn. You can see the long, tapered shape of the tin horn hanging on a peg near the dingle door. It is silent now, but in just a few minutes, the cook will take it down. He will step out into the crisp, cold air and blow a long, clear note that will echo through the sleeping pines. But for right now, that horn is silent. The morning has not yet broken the spell of the night. Here is a simple historical fact. The shanty boy sleep is known to be some of the deepest sleep a human can experience. Because the air in the room is so full of moisture and the smell of pine, and because your body is so physically tired, your brain enters a state of deep recovery. Your muscles are rebuilding themselves, and your mind is clearing away the stress of the dangerous work. You are not just resting, you are being made new again. This is the miracle of the shanty. It is a place where a hard life is made soft for a few hours every night. Now we take a final moment of atmospheric silence. You do not think about the trees, or the horses, or the spring. You do not even think about the warmth. You just are. You are a part of the darkness. You are a part of the hay. You are a part of the long history of the men who have slept in this forest. In this silence, you feel a peace that is deeper than any words. The world is perfectly balanced. The fire is enough, the blankets are enough, and you are enough. You feel a deep sigh move through your chest, a sigh of pure contentment. The light in the room is changing. The red glow of the stove is being joined by the first faint light of the day. It is a soft, pearly light that makes the frost on the nailheads look like tiny pearls. You see the Deacon Seat sitting empty and silent, waiting for the men to sit and pull on their dry socks. You see the socks themselves, now bone dry and toasted, hanging like silent ghosts above the stove. Everything is ready. The camp is prepared for the day, but it is still holding on to the last few minutes of the night. You feel a wave of gratitude for this moment of quiet before the busy world begins again. The smell of the room is at its best right now. The sharp scent of the wood smoke has mellowed out, and the sweet smell of the marsh hay is very strong. It is the scent of a safe harbour. You feel like you're in a ship that has finally reached the dock after a long journey on a stormy sea. The deadly frost is still out there, making the trees crack and the snow crunch, but it cannot touch you. You are in the heart of the fortress. You are tucked away in the warmth envelope, and you are perfectly, wonderfully safe. Your eyes are closed, but you can feel the world waking up. You hear the soft clink of a coffee pot in the next room. You hear the first stirrings of the man next to you. But you don't move yet. You stay in the warmth, enjoying the feeling of being completely relaxed. Your feet are warm, your hands are soft, and your heart is calm. The night shift is over. You have done your duty to yourself and to the forest. You have found peace in the middle of the wilderness. The air is cool on your face, but your body is a furnace of heat under the spread. It is the perfect balance. You feel a sense of pride in your work and in your home. You are a lumberjack, a guardian of the past, and a survivor of the North Woods. You have seen the beauty of the night shift, from the red glow of the stove to the deep quiet of the snow. You have shared the warmth with your brothers, and heard the songs of the fire. You are ready for whatever the morning brings. But for now, you just rest. The world of the long winter night is starting to fade. The shadows are pulling back into the corners, and the grey light is filling the room. You feel the heavy weight of sleep pulling you down one last time. A final gift from the shanty before the work begins. You are safe. You are cared for. The forest is quiet, and the fire has done its job. You are drifting now, sinking into the softest part of the hay, moving away from the world of logs and into the world of light. The air is turning soft, and the stars are disappearing. The long watch of the winter night is finished. You have seen the fire through to the morning, and the morning is finally here. You can feel the strength returning to your limbs and the peace filling your soul. The story of the shanty is etched into the logs and written in the frost, and you are a part of that story forever. The sun is rising. The gates are opening. The watch is ended.